Great. We want to welcome everyone. The August 17th. It was the August 17th MVD meeting of the Board of Commissioners. And I just have an announcement. Due to COVID-19 and the state of emergency, the public participation will be offered by phone. You may watch the meeting via video, which can be accessed at www.mvdwater.org. As a courtesy, Merrimack TV is also recording the meeting, which will be posted on their website at a later date. You can participate in this meeting by phone by calling 1-646-876-9923 and entering meeting ID number 846-3220-8825. At this time, we'll stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I want to welcome everyone. Should go through and do a roll call. We'll start with the commissioners that are here at the MVD office. That to my right, Wolf Von Sean, present. Myself, Don Preventure, present. Ken Ayers, present. And we have John Lyons from his home. Where are you zooming in from, John?
25 Windsor Drive.
Great. Thanks, John. And Paul McLaughlin is excused from this meeting. So we could get right into the agenda. And first on the agenda is the capital projects with Underwood Engineers. It looks like we've got Keith on board and Joel Moulton. I don't think I've met you, Joel. Nice to meet you. Okay. So you guys can take it over and go ahead.
Okay. No financial report, or did I miss that?
No financial report today.
Okay. Joel and I are filling in for Peter and Mike today, and I thought it would be a good idea to have Joel here with me in case some certain questions come up. And as you know, Joel has been in the field. He represents the district in all the construction phase work on behalf of our contract with you. So he's your eyes and ears on a daily basis for all the projects out there for 4, 5, 7, and 8, and Turkey Hill that are under construction right now. So Peter couldn't make it. He had another commitment, and Mike is on vacation this week. So I thought I'd give you a pretty. I briefed with all those guys before and can give you a brief update, and we'll have some questions if you like. But before, we'll start with wells 4 and 5. And one of the reasons I did ask Joel to come on in, because I know some of you haven't met him, but I asked him to do a brief update too, and then I'll fill in some of the other things. So I'm going to turn it over quickly to Joel, sort of give you a status at where 4-5 is.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good evening. Nice to meet you all. Quick update. I'll go down through wells 4, 5, then 7 and 8, and then Turkey Hill. At wells 4 and 5, the startup of the GAC system is scheduled to commence on or about September 7th. There may be a possibility to move the startup up a week if Penta can have the delivery of the media by the 27th or 28th of August. The contractor is on course to meet the revised contractual substantial completion date of September 24th. The other components relating to the operation and startup of the facility are scheduled to be performed before the GAC system startup commences. They've been ongoing for a couple of weeks now. Wells 7 and 8, ICC has commenced work for the project.
Joel, let's stop on 4-5, and then we'll see. I had a couple things to add, and then we'll see if they have any questions before we move on.
Sounds good.
And what?
The question is now that comment. Wolf speaking. that comment that you just made, provided that, the GC contract is gonna be delivering at a certain point in time, we might be able to make up some time. Are we actively pursuing that?
Yes.
How are we pursuing that?
Working day to day, like with Penta, as they, are looking at their schedule and trying to get everything that's start up and lined up with everything that needs to go online. So far, it's looking like there's a good possibility that the media and Evoca will be on site next week to do the startup and download the, deliver the media.
Yeah, I guess I'm asking, are we communicating with Evoca and making it clear that they can help us here and to speed up the schedule and make up some time that we lost?
Yes, Penta is doing that on a daily basis.
Okay.
And my communications with the site super are daily as well.
I'm just asking because we haven't seen that kind of diligence with the delays that we experienced a couple months ago.
And this is probably one of the places I'll step in, Wolf. And I know your point, and you're right. And we're doing what we can to sort of expedite and keep pressure on with Penta. But we do intentionally try to not interact with the subs and suppliers to the extent that we get ourselves or yourself sort of jammed up. So we are part of the conversations, but the official communications really, I mean, unfortunately has to go through Penta. Because if we start making, but we talked about that this afternoon as we were getting ready to speak with you guys is the things we're doing to try to expedite it. And one of the other things that we're doing to try to expedite it is, we've talked about this in the past too, I think, is expediting some of the sampling and using, expedited turnarounds so that we can reduce all that. But I don't think these Evoca is coming out on site on Wednesday, Joel.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are going to know Wednesday how all this thing's going to play out. But what I've been told is that they are going to meet the dates, no matter what, is what I've been told. And then if we can get it earlier, which we're going to know on Wednesday, it might be sooner.
Okay.
That would be good.
I agree.
So Keith, this ESR 46 agreement here.
Yeah. And as you know, and I was going to bring it up because I know I was one of the ones who was really sort of trying to get a resolution on this time extension, which I can't remember the times. I think it was like that we ended up offering 70 days. And I wanted to open it up if there's any questions for me on that. But this amendment number 1 does deal with that, Dawn. And this is a no cost amendment to the district, meaning it stays within our contract amounts. All we're proposing is to shift some dollars from one task to another to help us recover or cover some of the costs and additional time for Joel and Peter to run the project or to facilitate the admin of the project. This is the first and the only amendment that we've had with you over this. I know there's been some change orders with the contractor, but we between the 2 and 3 ongoing projects we've been able to manage our time and our budget within the contract. This just allows us to shift $20,000 out of a task we didn't use to help us cover more of Joel's time and Pete's time because we did get the 2 or 3 months added.
That was one question I was going to have is this task already, is it not required? Or I'm just wondering if this needs to be done later, how are we not going to go over on it later? Just something that we didn't need in the end?
It was something we didn't use.
Oh, okay.
It was an allowance item that we had carried for what ifs on QAQC and some other things if it was needed, if we wanted to do some independent checking. The contractor has certain obligations for quality assurance. This was an opportunity for us if we felt like something needed to be done to use it. We didn't need it, we felt, so it's available to you.
Okay, good.
On that note, we're at like what, 92% complete or something like that?
In terms of the contractor's payments, I'd have to look at.
So we're above 90% completion, right?
I would say easily. It may not be. I'm not sure if the payment reflects that because of some of the retainages we hold. But Joel, does that sound about right?
Yes, I would be above 90.
Yeah, and looking at that, looking at the change order summary, we're 1.7% over budget right now. So I think that's pretty darn good. So I wouldn't be concerned signing that change, that ESR.
Great. All right, so we could probably vote to authorize this tonight. Does anybody have any questions on this amendment?
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So if not, I guess I could entertain a motion if someone wants to make a motion to proceed with this amendment to this ESR.
Make for the amendment number 1 to ESR number 46.
Great, and that's dated August 13, 2020. And again, that's not a change to the final amount, so that's a good thing. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Ken, second by Wolf to accept amendment number 1 to ESR number 46 dated August 13, 2020. Any further discussion on those, on that matter? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And we will do a roll call vote on that too, and we'll start with Wolf Bonchon.
In agreement.
So it's a positive, affirmative. Myself, I agree. Ken,
I agree.
agree. And John, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's 4-0-0, no abstentions, no oppositions. So that's good. Was there anything on the change order summary that you wanted to bring to our attention?
I didn't specifically. I know Peter provides that to you on a monthly basis. So, unless there's questions on it, I can try to answer them or get them back to Peter to get back to you. But I think it was just provided for ongoing information.
Yeah, he usually points out if anything's been added or what changed on here, and I'm not aware that anything is new that I can tell. So other than that, I guess we could probably move on to the next project. Joel, if you want the floor on that, or Keith.
Nope. Joel can start with an update on 7 and 8, and then I don't really have anything to fill in on that one anyway. So go ahead, Joel.
Okay,
Okay.
well, 7 and 8, ICC has commenced work for the project. Work that's been completed to date. The site has been cleared and grubbed. Building addition side of the existing 7 and 8 building has been demoed. The residual waste line has been relocated. The excavation for the foundation has commenced. The building demolition for well 7 has been completed. The existing propane tank and concrete pad have been removed in preparation for the new 2,000-gallon propane tank and slab to be installed. And site preparations have commenced for soil stabilization beneath the existing building for the installation of the underground process piping. That would be through today.
Okay. So you said the building for well 7 has been demolished?
The demolition work for well 7 has been completed. Some interior block wall removal on 2 walls. That work has been done.
Moving the door over from where the line
Okay, I was gonna ask about that.
storage is now, they're shifting the door over to the, where the old chlorine or the old closet used to be.
Okay,
In the doorway.
so we're keeping the building,
We're
Yes.
keeping the well.
Yeah.
No, the door
Okay.
stayed.
because I didn't know if, we're running into the cold weather without a building. I was going, how's that gonna work? But, okay, that makes more sense. Okay, proceed. Any other questions from anyone on that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Good,
Would you like me to proceed with Turkey Hill?
sure.
According to the most recent project schedule, the concrete slabs for the booster pump station and the generator are scheduled to be poured next week, with the delivery of the station to be on or about 10/15, October 15th, 2020. Miscellaneous site electrical will be performed intermittently during that time, and the contract substantial completion is 12/9/2021. 2020.
Right. All right. Any questions on that Turkey Hill Booster project? Wolf?
So that is a very tight site there to do anything. Are we gonna block down part of the street at one point or something for the rigging or for concrete pouring, or how is that gonna work?
I don't believe so. Do you recall, Joel, if you've talked with, Tim?
No, I do not believe there'll be any, the only time that's anticipated that there'll be some kind of traffic delay will be when the station itself arrives to back it in up along, into the site with the crane to lift it into place. That's the only thing that's anticipated at this time that I'm aware of.
But the intent is to do everything on site.
Correct.
We won't traffic or anything like that.
Kudos, that's impressive, because there's no room and it's uneven too.
It's a big hill.
I'm impressed. So, but the station goes again underground, right?
Yes. It's not underground. It's sitting on a foundation.
It is?
Yeah.
Because the old one was underground.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right.
So what's there now? Is there a slab there with piping penetrations ready to accept the structure? Is that
There's
what's
a
there?
foundation with pipe penetrations. The slabs are scheduled to be poured next week.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Comments? All right. I guess that does it for our updates on our existing projects under construction anyways. So,
I just had a brief update on well 2.
Yep.
If you're ready for that.
yep, go ahead.
Yeah, since that's the one that's in design phase, it's the only one right now that's not under construction, but you do have copies of the 60% design drawings, I think, that were submitted back in June. Peter reminds me that some building layout has been revised or has just recently been revised based on comments from the district, from the board and staff. What's next is to finalize the design, and what's been a little bit of a challenge is waiting, or at least getting some final outcomes from some of the ongoing work from the hydro-geo efforts that are ongoing, especially as it relates to particularly as it relates to replacement well number 3, and how we accommodate provisions for whatever that new source would be. Our thinking is, and we'll probably know more later when you speak to Jamie about his update. And we do have a pending work session with GZA next week to go over where they are, because what we need to do is, when we go to the final design phase here, make sure we're all on the same page on how and what we want to incorporate into the treatment plant for its ability to accept that source, both on from a rate point of view and a water quality point of view. So we've made some assumptions, but I think our concern is that if we go too much further, we're going to start, risking maybe making assumptions that aren't quite good. So I wanted to have a little bit of a dialogue with you tonight. Peter asked me to check in with you guys on if that approach is okay. And at some point, I think, to keep things on schedule, we're just going to have to make some decisions, but we're hoping that they can be made with more data from Jamie and his group as they do their pieces.
So right now it's designed to have the ability to be expanded in the future, but right now you guys are just designing for the flow from well 2. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, and what we're trying to do is, a lot of it has to do with the electrical services and some other things that we have to do. I mean, we could take the approach, Don, and just say, hey, let's just assume there's going to be a new source here, and everything's got to be sized for it. And obviously that's just it's a capital cost item to you. It provides the most flexibility and down the road for you, but I don't know that we know for sure yet where and where the well's going to be and whether or not it's going to be, and what water quality it's going to have so that we know, what that should be. So the point being, do we just take the conservative route and design in a bunch of those possibilities, or do we wait a little bit to see if we can get some findings based on Jamie's work?
Did
You know what I
he-
mean? Yeah.
If I recall, I thought he mentioned at the last meeting, did he have some preliminary water quality results?
I thought it looked pretty well. It was consistent with well two, I thought.
Yeah, which bodes well, and maybe we'll press him on that. He'll probably tell us about it when he.
We think he's close, Don. We think he's close. And I think, it really boils down to, I think they're still in their findings phase, and I think they've got some preliminary work, and we could work with that, but they're not done. So I think it's, the idea is how close and how firm do we want them to have their work before we, advance. So we're waiting at least until our work session with them next week. And I think we'll know more when you guys speak to him tonight. But that's been one of the challenges, just because there are certain things that we have to make decisions on, get our electrical engineers to proceed with, and we just don't want to go down a path and then have to back it up.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, if that's only a week away, that'd be interesting to report back to us about what you guys come up with after that. So that'd be good. Okay. What next do we have?
If you're ready to move off well two, we have ESR number 54 in front of you.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions on
Actually, can I-
well two before we move? Go ahead, Ron.
So Keith, we're talking that right now I guess the plan would be to design to 1,500 gallons a minute. Is that for well two at a minimum?
1,500.
Yeah.
That's what our presumption is, but I know there's been some back and forth discussion on what the long-term viability of that is. Our presumption all along is we wanted to be able to have that well pump at its normal rated, or its normal use, in the 1,100, 1,000, 1,200 gallon minute range, but have the ability on a peak demand basis to pump 1,500. We want to make sure that's still right. And so what we've asked from GZA is just sort of a tech report that says, here's how we're going to operate these wells. We feel comfortable with that, even if it's a restatement of that understanding, so that we can just go and put that together in terms of its, the design. So that's what we understand. That's our basis. But that's all part of the work session, just sort of get an effort, to affirm that, to confirm that with them, so that we're all comfortable going forward.
So if we get to of comfort that a potential new well to replace well 3 might have another 1,000, 1,200 gallons per minute capacity, would it make sense to change the design that you're doing now to accommodate additional carbon filters for that new well? At some point, I think it would make sense to do that. We wouldn't want to go through the whole design construction process. But I know there's a level of comfort or a level of risk, because by the time you don't really know what you have until the permanent well is in or pump tested and approved, really. So we could have you design something for 3,000 gallons a minute and it could fall through potentially. So there's a little tricky to have to kind of marry those two together, right?
Exactly. But, and I think right now it's just a lot of conversation, Dawn. And that's just because that's where we're at.
Right.
So, and that's fine. But I think the more that they advance their work, the more those assumptions are refined into better recommendations or conclusions. And based on that, then we can go forward. Your scenario is, or one of you, maybe what I thought about is if we do find a new well that has greater yield than we need, then maybe we wouldn't push well number 2 beyond what everybody's sort of been comfortable with its current operational values. We all know one of the low hanging fruit we talked about was just ramping up well number 2 by 400 gallons a minute because it's permitted. But everybody also says, if it's not broke, if it's not, don't risk it and don't push it. So that all sort of plays into the calculus as we come together with the work that's sort of ongoing. And we just felt it was probably worth just pausing for a short term, getting the answers so that we're all on the same page. This is the best information we have where we're at. Let's go put the design together. It's not going to change much. It's really, it's concrete and footprint and electrical systems. And, it's just, do we want to build in the extra space? And if so, it's all based on some sound work that they've done. And they're just not quite, they may be close, but it's just, we're not quite there. I think we're going to be there soon.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So that was I just wanted to talk about that just in terms of, that's why if there's a question about a pause, that's really why.
Right. All right.
In some regards, we talked about this, and I'll just say, well number 3, we all put a timeout on it for the right reasons, but at least with well number 3, we knew what we were dealing with, right? So we could just advance it. But right now we don't. We know that there's some other options out there, but like you said, we don't know exactly what the yield or the water quality is going to be. We have some ideas, but we got to get to the point where we have a better result on those so we can advance the design.
Right. We know right now that it's a monster to have to try to deal with well 3 to bring into the mix right now. And we're trying to tame that monster into something a lot smaller in cost wise. Right. So,
which was the right thing to do for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or anything on that before we can move on? Okay. So the next thing you want to do is this water source option evaluation update.
Yeah, last time you met with Mike and Peter, I know you spoke about this and had asked Mike to put together a ESR for it, which he did. And so what we have here in front of you is ESR number 54, which deals with 3 things to supplement the well number 3 options alternatives. And the first part of this ESR number 54 is for the preliminary design of Mitchell Woods to get it to the 30% level of design. And that's sort of been our approach with the district as we advanced options, so that 30% level of design gives you a better feel for opinions of costs and capital costs and even O&M costs associated with that. So that's part of it. We'll do the same thing or similar thing, although with artificial recharge, it would be more concept design because we're still a little bit earlier, but based on that concept design, we can come up with capital costs and O&M costs and the benefits for AR at wells 4 and 5 to supplement and augment the yield there with the potential of increasing capacity potentially, or at least the long-term yields. And then the third option you would ask Mike to do was the Manchester Waterworks connection, whether it be a long-term viable or a viable long-term option, and the cost associated with that. There's been some conversations about that recently, especially since the bans and the drought conditions that we're in, as to whether or not that would be a cost-effective solution. And that one obviously comes with challenges as well because of the chloramines. But with all these 3 options supplemented with the well number 3, the concept would be that we'd have capital cost, O&M costs, advantages and disadvantages, water quality information, and then most importantly, normalized cost curves, which I think is something we've been all talking a lot about, so that you can make informed decisions on what options make the most sense and when to implement them. And so that is what ESR number 54 is. We had previously given you a scope to do the preliminary design on Mitchell Woods. And then so what Mike did, I think, is pulled it back and added these 2 other options, AR and Manchester Waterworks. And I think we had given you a fee for $18,000 to do the Mitchell Woods. Well, when we went back, and because we'd be doing all 3, we actually dropped that. That doesn't show in the SR, but we actually felt we could do that for less. And then we were going to do each of the other 2 for $9,000. So it was Mitchell Woods for 15 instead of 18, and then the other 2 for about 9 each is what we came up with When you had 15, 9, and 9, you get 33. That's how we came up with that. But I wanted to point out that we did drop, or because there's more going on concurrently, it was a little bit more cost effective. So as a result, we had scaled back. We were able to be a little bit more efficient on our work with Mitchell Woods.
Right.
And in the end, you'll end up with a master plan supplement and that deals with all these options on the table.
So again, the ultimate goal, try and get a cost per gallon per day or whatever of source capacity, and see what's our most economical choice, basically. So I think you mentioned in here that the replacement for well 3 is already being considered under a different scope of work, correct?
Yep.
So that we're only looking at those 3 items you mentioned: Mitchell Woods artificial recharge and the Manchester Waterworks connection. So,
but just to point out, we will be really, you're going to end up with one deliverable for all 4 of those, even though that was authorized under a different task. We'll wrap those together into one master plan supplement. So you'll have one working document in the end.
right, good. So the Manchester Waterworks connection, it looks here that you are evaluating a couple different options with that. One of them is, my understanding is, we've opened that connection in the past, and as long as we isolate a portion of our distribution system in the northeast part of town, that hydraulic grade line is okay to carry water into that isolated section, as long as we have to flush all of our water out of it and replace it with the water from Manchester that has chloramines instead of chlorine. And are you going to look at that as a potential permanent situation?
I didn't see, it doesn't look like Mike specifically put that in there. I do know that is something that Ron and the district has done in the past. So
Sorry.
we can, I don't think we'd have any problem. I almost feel like that was something we're going to look at as part of this. So I'd have no problem making sure that that's part of this deliverable. It's really going to be, I mean, the idea of that is really the ability to just eliminate a pump and then only do this for a portion of the system. So it's really a subset of looking at it, for system wide. So I don't see that as a large effort to sort of create a sub option to it. So
Yeah. So one other question I had was, I tried finding information on PFAS concentrations in Manchester's water, and the only things I could find online on the DES website and whatnot was back from 2016. So I'm not sure if we know, if we want to use Manchester as a long-term solution, I want to know what their PFAS concentrations are. So if there's nothing recent, I don't know if they're even sampling on a routine basis, if they're even required to or doing it on their own. But maybe does it make sense to collect a sample from their system in the vicinity where we would connect to it, and just to see what the PFAS is? I don't see any of the PFAS being addressed in this ESR. So I'm just wondering we'd like to know. Obviously, it's probably going to be less than 12. I think it's in the low single digits from what I saw back in 2016.
yeah, I mean, we can talk about it, doing a sample if you'd like. I'm pretty sure Manchester's going to have that data, maybe as a starting point. But if we feel like there isn't, maybe we could tap into the ability to take one. But we'd have to get their permission, of course. So what's it?
Really, any contaminant that is on the radar.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're meeting all of the other secondary standards, iron and manganese and everything else. But
Sodium chloride,
yeah, sodium chloride.
especially coming from, well,
I don't know. Like you're saying, I got to think that information has to be there I just couldn't find it myself when I tried looking a couple of weeks ago. And I don't know if that's something we could have you guys, include or add to your task just to find out what the water quality is.
It's going to
And
be
if-
part of this deliverable. I mean, like I said earlier, it's going to be a summary of water quality considerations, other advantages and disadvantages, as well as cost. So that will be part of it. We will collect water quality from Manchester.
Okay.
And then if we feel like there's something missing, we can talk about at that point whether or not we should get some supplemental work. But I got to believe that they're going to have some data.
I think so too. And maybe it's just that, I don't know if they're posting it in a place that I could find it. Maybe we have to call them and ask them and say, where's your water quality results? Where can we find those? But I'd just be curious to make sure everything is, there's no surprises, I guess, is what I'm trying to make sure.
Yeah.
I didn't, no, I wasn't.
I would think if they get any kind of PFAS sample, that should be in there.
Yeah. Well, I think it went. And then there's one other thing on the artificial recharge.
Maybe Don, just before we move off the Manchester one, I did see it on page 6 where Mike had identified isolating a portion of the MVD system, which would be fed exclusively with chlorinated water, versus converting all secondary disinfectant in the MVD system to chloramine. So he did have that in there already, just to.
Right. Okay, I thought I remembered seeing that, so that's good.
Don, can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, John. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to see you. I think we met up in Maine at a conference one time.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep. Now they're all virtual.
So, yeah, I know, right? So with Manchester, we're not sure about the water quality. Are we sure about the willingness to sell us water?
I think they'd sell it to you. You just got to pay their rates and their fees and in the SDC. So it is something that we looked at in the past. And as long as they have the capacity, I believe they would be willing. And the only reason I say that, John, is that we're very involved with the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project, and they were more than willing to take on additional users down there, and they sold 2 or 3 million gallons a day.
Yeah, I just
That
don't know where
project.
their capacity is after all that. I know they're committed to that. So if we need to know about the water quality, do you want me to just give Dave Miller a call and ask him?
Yep, I would do the same thing. So if you have a good contact, Dave would share it. That'd be great.
Actually, Ken looks like he just found a link on there, and the Manchester Waterworks. What is on? What's the?
It was Manchester, City of Manchester Waterworks, and they when you scroll down all the way down on their thing, they had water quality reports, and then when you click that, they have it for the year, so they have 2019, but they don't have 2020.
So it looks like they do have PFOA in there. There's a low 2 point something up to 5 point something parts per trillion. And there's other PFAS in there that are lower than that. And I guess I'm only mentioning that because it's something we got to consider. I know the town is expecting, and we're expecting MVD water to be essentially non-detect. So if we isolated a portion of the system up there and we don't treat over there, then they're going to be getting water that has some detectable levels of PFOA and other PFAS in there. And I just don't know how that's going to jive with the expectation of MVD water being non-detect. It's the same situation we have with Pennachuck right now, because they're not non-detect either. So whenever in the future, when we get water from Pennachuck, if we need it, that's not going to be treated either. But Pennachuck's not right now, and it's not being considered as the permanent source, just a auxiliary source. So those are concepts that we're going to have to think about, and it may have an impact on how the customers will receive that if that's an option. I mean, to consider having to build a PFAS plant to treat Manchester's water to put it in Merrimack's system, an MVD system, that's that's a big leap in my mind, but, I don't know where that land would be to do that, and then there's be certainly additional costs, but I guess what I'm thinking is that when you're, normalizing all these costs in the CSR, maybe one of the options you might want to add in there just to normalize it is just throwing a wild guess. And I think by the time, we're going to be in the middle of building one PFAS plant that's hopefully going to be online soon. We've got costs on the addition over in Hollis. Maybe if we can just put some rough numbers on one option of adding a PFAS plant to a certain amount of water that we'd be looking at from Manchester, and to kind of see how that cost, would add into the normalized cost of getting water from Manchester. Because I think we really need to compare apples and apples. If the goal is to have non-detect PFAS in MVD's water, I don't know how that would be received by the customers if they realize that section of town, or if we mix it with the rest of our system, wouldn't be non-detect. So, maybe just adding in what a conservative estimate would be for a PFAS plant to treat. And I'm not sure even what volume of water we're talking about buying from Manchester, if it's 1 million, 500,000, and if it's on a permanent basis or just, 4 months of the summer or whatever. I don't really know how you guys are going to try and wrap that up, but it
Nope.
might be a little tricky to normalize that cost into a gallons per day that we're not really sure what the gallons per day is.
Yeah, no, I think we can come up with some targets on that, Don. I mean, if we go back to the master plan report, which I think there's a couple things in there that I'll just point out. One is, we had a 20-year design rates that we knew we needed for max day and average day. So one way we'd probably tackle that is what do we have in town? What do we have for our sources in town that have the water quality and the treatment levels and the groundwater sources that, that we're happy with? And then what do we need? And the difference might be the number we would target as a starting point with Manchester, for example. That is kind of what we did with Pennachuck. And Pennachuck, it's the same thing. You're paying your retail rates down there. You're for the privilege of using it on an emergency basis only. But if you ever wanted to have it as a reliable, long-term, sustainable, committed source to you, you'd have to do the same thing as you would in Manchester, and that is to buy into it to get your reserve capacity. So we can target a flow based on that. If we still like our design year flow needs, subtract what we have, then we know what else we need to get. That's at least a starting point. The other thing I'll point out is we understand there's going to be a lot of non-monetary considerations in these matrices as you make a decision. Going back to the master plan again, and I think Ron would remember this too, but when the master plan was done 6 years ago, there was a deliberate, interest in just sort of maintaining groundwater. And so if you actually look at the mission statement in the master plan, and I think maybe even on the website, and maybe even in your bylaws, it talks about, our goal and our mission is to provide groundwater to our districts. We'd show, it was a groundwater thing. So I think we'd have to, my only point is there's some things in there we may have to revisit, and those are just some part of, and I'm not saying none of this is not doable. It's all doable, but it's just all part of that conversation as you decide if you want to use Pennachuck water or Manchester water because of these other factors.
Right. I just want to make sure we're not buying a viable source.
No.
And to know if it's viable, obviously, these are considerations we have to include is, how much the buy-in cost and what do we need to do for a pump station? And also, what are we going to do about PFAS treatment if we decide to do that or not? So maybe ultimately having a cost that includes a PFAS plant and one that doesn't, in the end, something we can consider. Wolf?
Understood. Yep.
One more aspect on that Manchester connection. It says here our Underwood will identify the most feasible and cost-effective option for MVD use of chloraminated Manchester water. You guys also have another ESR in the works. That is the one that treats, or that covers the distribution system maintenance and corrosion prevention and water quality from a,
System-wide
from,
evaluation.
right, the system-wide evaluation from a, you know, from a consumer perspective, you know, just the sheer appearance of water, right? Discoloration, sediments, chlorine smell, and all these things. And we have heard repeatedly feedback from some citizens in town that the chlorine smell is quite overpowering at times. And we understand that chlorine has a half-life going down the lines, right, going down the pipes. And as such, there's a higher concentration of chlorine closer to the plants and wells than it is further away, right? So likely those people that are complaining about this are people that are just shy of those water sources and treatment plants. My understanding is that with chloramine, we have possibly the option, because the half-life is longer and the loss of that effect is not depleted as fast as going down the line as it is with chlorine. There might be a chance for us to help with that as well, switching to chloramine. So I would like to make sure that this ESR, or the ESR that looks at corrosion prevention and water treatment in general from a chlorine standpoint, is also covering that question.
Yes, and
Thought.
well, I was only going to say, it's a good point, Wolf. And, you know, the switchover is a challenging thing. There are benefits and there are some challenges, but there's some recent experiences in the state where that transition has occurred. So, you know, we would be going to some of them and you know, seeing how it worked. And very recent, like Exeter just converted, and Hampstead area is converting right now. So we have the ability to learn from those things too, on the real life experiences and transitioning here in New Hampshire. But you're right.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not saying that that's the way to go. I'm not saying that at all.
Yep. No,
Because maybe the other option is to have decentralized, you know, chlorination stations away from the wells, right, where we re-inject chlorine further down the lines, or whatever the solution is. But there's an aspect, and there is complaints in town about that part of our
Right.
water supply. And I only mention this because I'm reading here feasible and cost-effective option, right? What I'm saying is there's other aspects we need to also consider that I wasn't sure if I'm seeing those in here listed.
And as 4 and 5 come online, that's another injection point of chlorine, so that will get better. The residuals that we're putting out at, let's say, like well 7 could probably come down because we have something that's close to the center of town.
Like and maybe a question that we don't need to answer today, but I'd be interested to see a map of concentrations too. You know, maybe are we, for example, looking at the furthest point in the distribution system and measuring the residual we have there, and based on that, dialing that up and down at the injection points. Maybe we are, maybe we're not, but
No,
I'd be interested to know more about this.
So we try to stay consistent, but I mean, we do look at. Right, we're saying, yeah, with flushing, we do that as well, but I would say with Stephen, that first samples meeting as well.
And maybe, you know, that's obviously something for another meeting maybe, but I'd like to hear more about that, because it is an ongoing complaint that pops up repeatedly, you know, and I would like to make sure we have that on our radar.
Okay.
I'd say one thing about that. Wouldn't the chlorine residuals be with all of your monthly bacteria sampling at all those points? I mean, that could give you some information right there.
Yeah, that's what Ron
That
does.
would
Yeah,
Yeah.
Steve goes out and does the bacteria samples twice a month.
Well, it seems to be that the occurrence of a very high chlorination, you know, perceived high chlorination, is oftentimes just daily events, right? Or like there's a singular event that people are complaining about it, and then it's no longer a problem for that person a couple of days later. So I would like to understand that.
There are limits of what you're supposed to be putting out for chlorine as well. So we're not exceeding anything by any means. It's just not.
Right.
We keep a higher residual sometimes to get out to the first points, but other than that, we're not within all our, what's supposed to be as far as the rights go.
And I think water quality changes affect the chlorine residual too, like well 3 has higher iron and manganese, and those react with chlorine, so you might have to bump the dose up. If the iron and manganese comes down, then you probably got more chlorine than we need. It doesn't react as much with the iron and manganese if they're lower, so it's kind of a moving target to some extent as well. So that's a little challenging. And I don't know if chloramine would help that. Maybe it would be smoother or something, but it's in this proposal. So I think it's good that they're going to be looking at that anyways.
So on this task, what I'll do is I'll add a bullet that talks about other considerations will be given. Considerations will be given to other benefits and challenges, including water quality and well, of course, water quality, but some of the things that you just mentioned, Wolf. So I'll get that in there. And then for Dawn, I'll add a bullet that consideration for PFAS treatment as well.
Yeah. Right. So do you want us to wait till you make those changes, or do you want us to try to, if we're inclined to approve this with those edits to your proposal? How's the best way to do that?
That's okay with me. If you want to prove it conditional on that, I'll get Ron a revised version with those bullets in it.
Do you think the fee is still going to stay the same?
Sure.
The fee will stay the same.
Really? All right.
No, and I'll tell you, I mean, as far as the Manchester connection, I think some of that for the water quality stuff and that Wolf was talking about was going to be in there anyway, because Mike and I talked a lot about it as we were preparing it. So for me, that's just a clarification. The PFAS treatment we weren't considering necessarily, but Merrimack and Underwood has a lot of experience in what the cost of a treatment facility is. So I think and to your point, Dawn, it'd be very easy to sort of, at least from a order of magnitude, understand the impact of having to treat it. And that I think would be enough to help in your decision process. So I don't see it as a large lift. If we didn't have any PFAS costs in Merrimack, it might be different, but we know what it costs to build a PFAS facility in Merrimack right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking you to do a 30% design and an estimate. So, right.
Yeah. So as long as you're happy with that, we know it, let's just say we know it costs $15 a gallon. That's a starting point, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions on this? Or if not, then if we're inclined to make a motion to.
Did you have a question on the AR part? I thought I interrupted you earlier.
You know what I did? I was just wondering about, looks like you had something in here about, can't find it now. Oh, riverbank filtration. Is that, would that be considered like a well source itself? Or that would just be still considered like a surface water withdrawal from the Merrimack as an artificial recharge point?
It's just a withdrawal method in this case. And the reason we're looking at it, I think, is because it's what we looked at in Dover. It just sort of helps with, it's a way of reducing debris and solids to your facility versus a direct intake, which requires a screen. I mean, they'd have a special screens that are required now, but I think we'd be looking at it at least as an option, because it might either be a lower cost or it might be a better operational solution for you. So that was why it was in there. And it kind of comes from our experiences in Dover when we did it for the AR there.
I guess what I was wondering is if we're already, pulling it through the riverbank, can we bring it right into the treatment plant, or do we have, can we bypass the artificial recharge basins and just bring the water right into the treatment?
It would still be considered a surface water. So
it would. Okay.
Yeah. So
isn't Manchester doing this up north of Manchester or something?
Yeah, but those are more wells anyway, but they have a surface water treatment plant versus here we just, and so they have their wells under the river, as I understand it, and they pump it, and I understand they treat it at the surface water treatment plant at their source where Massabesic is. So it's going through a surface water treatment facility anyway. We don't have one in Merrimack. We just have activated carbon filters now in chem feeds. So it puts you in a different world where, Merrimack, Manchester already had that.
Yeah, so there's no way that this would be considered a groundwater source because you'd probably still be pulling in all the microparticulate river and all that stuff.
No, we'd have to, right.
Yeah, and it would be a whole different world over there, so I understand. Yeah, I think that was the only question I had. Looks like there's a lot of scope, and I think I'm gonna ask Jamie about all of this, about all of the additional scope and the column testing, and there's quite a bit in there, and I want to just get a handle from Jamie, and it looks like it's all in your proposal. So if he changes his mind on any of that stuff, then fine. But I just like him to walk us through what the additional all of the field work and the column tests and all that stuff that's going to need to be done. But that's probably something he can better answer than yourself, I think.
Yeah, and you should confirm that with him, but our understanding is he's either, whatever he's providing for you is what we're going to rely on. And I think Mike must have listed this hopefully because that's what they're doing. But we didn't include it in our scope. We just included it for reference. It's not right.
One thing I want to make sure we capture is all of Jamie's scope in this normalized cost result that we're trying to calculate. I want to, if he's got like there's a $500,000 task for this, and I want to make sure we capture all that, because a lot of the thing I remember back is there was a grant application for artificial recharge, and the number was $800,000, and I think that had nothing to do with, that was all engineering and testing, and that's a hard pill for me to swallow. So I got to find out what that's all about. And if there is an $800,000 price tag on some kind of engineering and column testing that needs to be done here, we either got to, if it's real, we got to make sure we capture that cost, or hopefully it's not real and we can do something other than that. Cause it just seems like that's going to kill the normalized cost to factor in a big number like that. So
you're talking about the hydrogeo efforts, or
I think it was all of that. If I remember what the scope of we sent an application to the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, and we were subsequently rejected. But I just want to know what that number is, if it's included in what Jamie needs to tell you needs to be done to factor into the price that you're going to provide to us. I want to make sure that's not missed.
Yep.
Because big portion of Jamie did a number for us a few months ago. I looked it up. He came up with a recommendation of $4 million for this total artificial recharge project. And I know that was not refined, and that's why we're having you refine those numbers now. But I didn't know if that included that $800,000 scope, or if that changed. And I don't know, can we decide on our own to forego part of that scope? And I don't know if that's not a smart move or not, but it just seemed like a very extremely high number for an engineering service. $800,000 on a $4 million project. It seems a little.
I think it had a lot of test wells again, and
and he might have done some of that already, perhaps. So
I made a note to see if we can find that and pull it up, and I can send it around to the board to get it to
Yeah.
review it again, because I don't remember what was in there myself.
Right. And that was part of the reason I was a little concerned about that moving forward on that grant application, because it was a very high number. So anyway,
I think that a lot of that was, I'm guessing, was probably hydrogeo. I remember the $4 million number when Jamie first was sort of trying to frame it, or at least, in the back of a napkin, come up with the ideas. But to answer your question, we are going to basically take the cost associated with their work, hydrogeo work. If it is 800,000, then we're going to include that we do identify that in our scope, that the cost, we will, working with EGGI and GZA, will determine required steps and associated costs for further evaluation and permitting. So that will all be included. So that, maybe before you start making those big investments, you know it's the right thing to do.
Okay. So I'm just pointing it out to you to make sure that you can ask Jamie about it when he says, here's a number for me to include in your analysis, to double check with him to make sure if it has that big scope item in it or not.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm going to ask him later on today too. So hopefully
Okay.
we'll get it from him.
Okay.
So that's all the questions I have. If anybody else has anything to offer.
I'll make a motion. Seconded. You haven't heard my motion yet.
What was a little delay there? So I'm glad you're all set.
That was the best. All right, I guess I'll make a motion to accept the ESR engineering service request number 54 dated August 17 from Underwood Engineers over the amount of, I think, $33,000, right?
That's right.
Coming from system development.
It'd actually be, the engineering account, from budget.
From budget?
You have an engineering budget account that covers that.
There's a couple different lines in there, but yes, I do cover that.
Okay. So
And why
moved.
not system development? Instead of protecting the budget a little bit?
I don't know if it can go from it can come out of system development right now. That would be to fund a new source.
Even studying
Yeah.
the options of new system water sources. We can. That can be a question for legal.
Yeah.
I mean, we have capital reserves, right? And
But we do have
money doesn't age.
It's a new budget just started off, and we do have different lines for different things in the there's other engineering as well. And
Right. But I also know that these budget lines have been burdened quite a bit with the amount of projects that are going on. With, we have quite a bit of side projects going on with Emery and Garrett as well. So I just want to.
I think those are coming out of the different funds that are out there. So
Okay.
But I will check on that. Does it?
It doesn't affect this one here, but maybe for the future, I'd like to know because we have those capital reserves, so why not use it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of burning the budget. So yeah, out of the engineering budget.
Yes, I don't know what the line is off the top of my head, but it would be out of budget.
Okay.
All right. So motion by Wolf,
Seconded.
second by Ken.
Do you want to specify with revisions?
yes.
Thank you.
And that was with revisions.
As discussed during the 8/17 meeting.
Right.
And there was just the two revisions, just to make sure I have them right, on the PFAS treatment cost for Manchester Waterworks and the identification of the other considerations besides cost, as Wolf was pointed out. Those will cover it.
Right. And then the PFAS research on Manchester's, well, I guess you already.
Yeah, but I'll make a point to add that.
Okay. So motion by Wolf, second by Ken. Anybody else have any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
We'll do a roll call again, and then we'll start with Wolf.
Aye.
Myself, Don Preventure, aye. Ken?
Aye.
And John, one more time?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? None, that's 4-0-0, so that passes. Great, thank you very much. Do you have anything else, Keith?
Just one thing, unless you do, but we had been talking off and on about maybe the pursuit of more grants from the Drinking Water Trust Fund. I put a tickler in my calendar for January. Sounds like a far time away. Thinking though that by then we'd have well number 2 advanced a little bit further. Just wanted to make sure that timing sounded right to you. Or do you want to try to shake the trees sooner?
We can probably decide it as we go. I mean, as we make progress, we can, I'm not sure if I would see a need to do it any sooner right now, but that may change as we progress.
Yeah, maybe if we information about did you say well two? No, well.
Well,
three?
generally, so we know that the standards change for PFAS now, which puts you guys in a different arena in terms of the need to do this project versus the desire to do it, right? So we had argued or discussed that maybe this is a worthy reason to go back to the trust funds. I was thinking January was a reasonable timeframe to do that. And maybe we, like you said, as more information comes sooner, maybe we could tackle that sooner, but we can play that by ear. I just wanted you to know I put it in for January, so it won't be forgotten. And if it happens sooner, that's fine. But
The other thing that just jogs my memory now, I think I sent an email out a month or so ago or a few weeks ago about we might want to also remember the fact that the warrant articles that we got the grants from did not include the warrant that we got the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund grants didn't include the lag PFAS vessels.
exactly.
That's I think at like what, $3 million or something extra for the lag vessels. And maybe that's, I know we went in just with a 10%, skin in the game value, which would only be 300,000. But I don't know if you're saying maybe now that these are required because it looks like all of our water exceeds the PFOA limit. Does that make sense that we try to request for more than 10%? If that's a possibility, but I'll leave that up to you, but I'm just throwing that out. I know for a fact that our design and the 14.5 million didn't include, it only included lead vessels. So that's a $3 million adder right off the top. If you're looking at 14.5 million going up to 17.5 million, if we could recoup some of that, I would be in favor of trying to ask for that. So yeah, if there's any other things you can think of, like pursuing a new source because of the issues we're having with well 3 with the high iron and manganese, sodium and chloride, if we can find a new source, and that's what Jamie's doing, if there's some availability on money for that. Although if we abandon well 3, there was some price tag that we already got awarded that was going to include treatment for well 3 that we can kind of reassign now, I guess, too. So there's a bunch of things to consider on that.
And there is, and I think let's just keep exploring it. I wanted you to know, I think probably after the holidays is going to be a good time for that, because that would be about the time where we should be dealing with well number 2 bids and so forth. So right. We'll keep notes, we'll keep strategizing, but I just wanted to make sure you knew I didn't forget about that, and that was what I did in my calendar just for a placeholder.
Good. The only thing I wanted to ask you before you leave is we have a running list of action items, and there was 1 or 2 of them that was on there that was related to Underwood, and if I can find it right now, that would be helpful. Back of where the minutes or the. There's a couple on there. I think Peter already addressed them. We like to cross these things out as much as we can.
Yeah.
So there was a question about Underwood to investigate any warranty consequences. Should there be a mixing of vessels and media manufacturers? I think we were straightened out on that we're free to choose any other GAC media manufacturers, but we weren't sure if that had any kind of implication on the warranty on the vessels themselves. Is that correct? So I don't know if you can answer that right now. I thought we talked about this, but if you have an answer, go ahead.
Well, I recall the conversation with Evoqua, because I asked that question too, and I think maybe Wolf you did as well, or somebody did, but my understanding was they recognize that they don't hold, the proprietary media that can fit and work in those vessels. We've talked about the possibility of even putting resin in them if we want to. And he said that does not impact the warranty. And I believe we're just getting the warranty information from them. And I'll confirm that. But as I recall, that was not an issue. The other thing to keep in mind on that is the first batch of carbon will be theirs, will be Evoqua's. And
Right.
really the vessel warranty is really only 1 year anyway. So you're not talking about, if we change media, you're probably talking about it at about the end of the warranty period anyway. So I really don't think that's an issue, as I
So what's
recall
the-
from the conversations.
What's the warranty period on the vessels of those? Is that just 1
One-
year too?
1 year, yeah.
Really? So this thing could rust through in a year and a half and there's nothing we can do about it?
It's not going to. It's not going to. But yeah, that's essentially what we get
All right.
and ask for. Yep. I'll double check, but normally we don't see that beyond. And again, Lynette's been managing the warranty, so if I'm speaking out of turn, she'll correct me. But if I've said something erroneous, we'll get back to you.
I was under the impression the vessel had maybe a longer warranty than the carbon. That's why I was asking
Okay.
that question.
Well, I will check.
We'll leave that on the thing just to
Yeah,
follow
don't
up on.
cross that one out then.
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you know, Keith, is there a, when they're changing out, is there any kind of an inspection process? Can they go into the tanks and see how the tanks are, when that media's being changed out? Would that be a good time to do an inspection on the inside of the interior?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any protocol for it, Ron, but it's easy to essentially get in and out if we just clean them out and do that. So it may be part of the O&M recommendations we make. I mean, Joel was in a vessel today, so you can get in them just to look at them. So
Do we follow confined entry procedures?
Yeah, I hope so. But I think you were just looking through the hatches just to get some observations done. So the point is there is access, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, at least on our end, we.
Yeah, and I don't think you were actually inside of it. I think you stuck your head in, probably put the flashlight around.
Correct.
With on your toes sticking out. But we do have confined space entry procedures in place.
We
So
don't for that.
What's that?
We don't for tanks, but yes.
So the only other item on here with Underwood on here is the inquiry of whether the radio transmission is a state-of-the-art requirement or if there's more appropriate state-of-the-art technology. That was referenced in your ESR number 50, so you're probably still working on that, I think.
We are. That's not a cross-off one yet.
Okay. All right. I think that's
And
all I
and just as a reminder on that, Dawn, that work does need to be done prior to bidding well number 2, because that will be the decision point on what equipment, if any, that we need to do system wide. So we're going to put it into well number 2 once that work's done. But that's the schedule on it.
Right. All right.
I
think,
have
go ahead.
2 points. And I should have mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Wells 4 and 5. In the meeting minutes for 7:20 on page 4, we have a notion that Peter is gonna go back to Penta as far as the extension agreement and put in some wording that they will not come back yet again with another extension request and monetary expectations for an extension. And I want to just close the loop and make sure that that actually made it into the agreement, and has this agreement been signed?
I believe it's been signed. I believe it was words put into the change order. I can look it up, Wolf, if you want me to now, or follow up later.
Follow up later is fine. I just want to make sure, when we have these discussions, sometimes we don't, and maybe that's a lesson for us to learn, to put that as an agenda, as an action item, right? When we ask you guys, I mean, you guys have been really good with that. So I kind of, not that you haven't, I'm sorry, that does sound weird, but you know what I mean. I don't want to go overboard with this, but this was somewhat important to us because we agreed to sign this extension, time extension, based on the fact that we were, that they retracted the monetary expectation for an extension, or for additional monies, which really didn't sit super well with me, first being late and then asking for more money in the process because they've been late. So it was somewhat important, I think, that this language made it into the agreement, and it would probably be good to have that feedback timely at the time before the agreement is being signed, so we know this doesn't fall under the radar.
Yep.
And
I'll
on-
check with, I'll have Peter follow up with you, Wolf, on what was put in there. But I believe that was signed in July.
Do you want to have Amanda make that an action
Yeah,
item?
yeah, I wouldn't mind having that as an action item. I just want to,
Just so we know to follow up on it, because there's so much stuff going on and we'll just
Right.
forget it.
And I did look it up while we were talking, because I could, but it does say, and hopefully it's consistent with what was talked about, but it does say that this change order, this time extension addresses all time extension issues to date. There's no cost associated with this time extension, even though one is noted in attachment F. I don't know what that meant. It must have been their request, but so that was the words that was in there.
doesn't quite cover the expectation that there's going to be no additional monetary expectations put out there by Penta for any
For the
further
same
delays.
reason.
Well, not just for this delay, but for other delays, right? So we kind of wanted to put an end to this. So it doesn't quite cover it, but it covers it to a large extent. So that was that. And on the same notion, about 2 months ago when we talked about the delays, we talked about contract language for future capital projects. And I really would like to see us having more leverage in the future. I felt a little bit like a toothless tiger. Honestly, I mean, again, from the multi-million-dollar contracts that I deal with at work, my customers, they have teeth. If there's any substantial delays, I would have to justify them. I couldn't just ride them out. And if there was delays, it wasn't usually me that has to pay penalties. And oftentimes they're not even substantiated. They're just a certain amount of dollars per day delayed. And it wouldn't be the other way around, that my contractor would, that I would be able to come around and ask my customer for more money just because I was late. So again, maybe this is something where the public sector is different than the private sector, and I'm willing to learn. But I think that discussion is warranted. I would like to have more leverage in the future in these projects.
Understood. And there are options, Wolf. When you're in the SRF world, there's fewer options, but you do when you're spending your own money, there are more options, definitely.
Well, and with wells 7 and 8 and so on, we really didn't have the time to look into that much. But we'll with 2 and 3 and whatever else is artificial recharge and so on, I think it would be time well spent to talk about that.
So
Yeah.
when those contracts are written and we're reviewing them in the future, we can be sure to look at the language, and maybe at that time, if you feel you want to revise some of the language, maybe that's the time to talk with Underwood to.
Maybe even prior to that.
Yeah,
My understanding is
yeah.
you guys use somewhat canned language, right? That's somewhat standard.
It's standard contract documents. We either use the state standards or we use the Engineers Joint Construction Documents, which is a standard issued by ASCE and other professional societies. So they are sort of standardized throughout the country. What you have, if you don't, and some of them have certain reputations being a little bit more contractor friendly versus, like you said, owner friendly, meaning, having a little bit more teeth. But regardless, any owner still has the ability to supplement any general condition or any standard set of documents to meet the needs or the expectations you have. So if there are certain things like time or other things that are important, because we do this all over the state, and then the communities write up their own supplementals that go right into the standard. So the contractor sees the standard, and then he knows what your differences are and what your expectations are. So there's the opportunity to do that. I'll just say, and I know I was one, I think maybe there were others that was really pushing to sort of resolve this. And I know that it maybe didn't appear like it was a good deal for the district. But I know, having done this, and I'm guessing maybe Wolf, you've seen it too, but in the experience I've had, it's tough. It's tough sometimes to make an argument. And with the COVID issues, I just felt like we were going to spend a lot of time and energy and not end up where we wanted to be. So, I hopefully in hindsight, maybe, maybe we could have done, maybe we could have decided to push that one, but I just felt like it wasn't going to work. So I'm not sure if it was so much the contract documents itself. My push was, I think if a contractor played a COVID card in any kind of, dispute resolution, I felt like they'd have, be tough to argue against it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. What bothered me more than anything was that the penalties that were on the contract were basically they were based on the additional expenses that supposedly this general contractor would be incurring. And there wasn't really any additional leverage there. So like a contractual penalty to me isn't really necessarily tied to the expenses a contractor has. It's a threat, right? In the end, it's a threat for money that basically eats my margin as a contractor, and therefore it motivates me to spend the overtime, right? And I realize overtime is costly, right? But the trick there is that the penalty is more costly than the overtime. And I don't think we have these mechanisms, at least right now, I don't see them. Maybe we have them in place, but I don't see them. The contracts that I'm used to, I'm going to have my guys work Saturday, Sunday and pay them a little bit extra to get the job done, because I know it's going to be ending up cheaper than me paying the penalty, and I protect some of my margin, right? So as a contractor. So I just want to make sure we have those tools available to us. And again, that might not be as common in the public sector, but I'm not surprised they're not. I mean, you would think there's some leverage that we can gain.
Understood.
And what I would probably suggest is that you guys look at that, and maybe drum up something that you're comfortable with within the market that you're acting in, the contractor base that you're working with. Maybe pay and take some of your less pliant customers that you have out there, less viable customers that you have out there, and look at their contract language and see if we can learn anything from it.
We can do that. I can tell you most of the communities, I think not just us as an engineer, that other engineers would, what we had in here was probably fairly standard. So if we're doing something in the municipal world that you're talking about might be a little bit different, but I'm not saying it hasn't been done. It's just, and I'm not saying you don't have the right to do it. You're the owner. You guys can do it. So we'll pursue that, Wolf, and have more conversations on it.
All right.
Again, that might be an action item too, because
yeah, that'd be good.
we have to take offline.
Yep.
All right. So, Amanda, are you clear on those? We got 2 action items that we talked about. Although Keith talked about the first one, I'm not sure
I
if
think
there's
we're
much
good with that.
follow up on
No,
that.
no, we're good with that. You can skip that one.
So it's really just the contract language that we want to put as an action item, and I don't think there's an end date on that. It's just going to be the next time a contract comes up that we'll make sure that that's in there. All right. Before we go, I just wanted to mention Jeff Daly contacted me and said that
Really?
XTD Labs is running a rapid small scale column test on zeolite. I don't know if you're familiar with XTD Labs. I don't think we use them, right? We haven't used them in the past.
We've been using EPS for the RSCTs.
Right. So I know in the past we talked about trying to do a RSCT on zeolite, and we weren't really sure how do you take the media, if you have to grind it down into a smaller particle like they do with GAC, and how that gets put into an RSCT column. But he said they were running and they were at 18,000 bed volumes with no breakthrough yet. It's not a lot of bed volumes, but I'm interested in continuing to get that information from him. What I would like to do is I just wanted to ask you what would be the process if MVD wanted to run our own rapid small scale column test? Are those the columns that are going to be set up in our wells 4 and 5 treatment plant?
That's the intent, and is so you can do some of your own work to help pick the medias that work best for you.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably, because I think those are like 30 grand for having outside lab do the testing, right? If I remember the numbers.
Yeah, it's not inexpensive.
Like, who would run that? Like, who's qualified to run that in our own Wells 4 and 5 column test lab setup?
Well, once the protocols are set up, I mean, you guys should be able, the intent is that you guys can run those. The intent is that you and your staff can set it up and run it. So, all you need to establish is the protocols and the media selections you want, but the equipment is being provided there for you to do it.
So would I be able to simply ask Jeff for what procedure that XTD used? I'd rather have XTD send us the procedure that they used. And I don't know what procedure, I'm sure it's probably not an ASTM thing yet, or I don't know what there is for those column tests for zeolite, if there's even anything that exists like that. But I just know we got Wells 4 and 5 coming online. We have those columns there. We've always, we've heard zeolite's the greatest thing, but we've never actually gotten any real documentation on it. And here's a chance for us to just test it ourselves and put everything else to bed and see what our water does for us in our own columns, in our own treatment plant. And I don't know how the best way to make that happen is, but if we're going to be there a couple of months, maybe that's something we want to look at. And if you want to think about how to make that happen, I guess I'm looking for your assistance on that.
Sure.
I don't know how much heavy lifting there is to consider who is qualified to do that, but that just might be a little side task that you might be interested in.
Yeah, definitely. With. Yeah, definitely. But what I might want to start with is to get the timing on the completion of the work they're doing now and get the data. Because I don't know what he means. I don't know if he gave you data, Don, but if he's just, if he's just looking at if he's looking at short chains and long chains, I don't know, but might start there and then figure out the best way to get you guys set up to start looking at things. Cause I don't think it's just zeolite. I think there's going to be other things you're going to be wanting to look at too.
I agree.
Yeah.
In those RSCT tests usually are in a matter of like weeks and months, not, years. It's not like full scale where you got to wait a year or 2 years for breakthrough, where it's something a lot more rapid. That's why it's called rapid, right? So
right.
I'll contact Jeff and I'll tell him, please give us the results of those tests and that we're going to be looking for a procedure on
from XT. Is it XTD or XTP?
XTD.
So I make sure you ask for it so that you get their report, not Jeff's interpretation of it.
Right. I agree. Okay. That was it. Great.
Any other questions of us?
I don't think so. You have anything else for Keith? All right. I guess that's it. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you. I see Jamie's on. I don't know if he's next on the agenda, but I'll sign off and I'll probably call back in on my phone just to listen in if I can. Okay. So you may see me pop back up because I'm curious what Jamie's going to be giving you an update on. So
why don't we go ahead now that he's here? We'll do the minutes after. Yeah.
Joel, you're all set too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, Jamie, you're next. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thank you. Been tied up in meetings all day, so I appreciate you putting me at the end tonight.
No, the timing was just right.
Yeah.
We till 7, but we're ready for you now. If you want to go ahead, that's
great.
Great.
I don't think I'm going to be too long, to be honest with you. I think today is going to be kind of an update. We have one action item, which is the Mitchell Woods pumping test proposal that I submitted to you, which not pumping test, but pumping test and water quality. At the last meeting, if you recall, the commission asked me to put together a proposal to go out, put a pump in the well, pump it, take a sample for bioorganic compounds and for PFAS. And so that's what we have. And you have a proposal in front of you for $4,400 to consider to do that. And then also my job here is to give you a little bit of an update on the Nattico Brook. We are finally able to move forward on that the very last wells. We've been working with the Conservation Commission. Dan Tinkham is going to be meeting with the Conservation Commission tomorrow at 6 p.m. to walk the site and identify the exact location and go over any concerns or restrictions or anything that they might have as part of the exploration process. So our plan right now is we're scheduled to drill that next week. We've got the driller scheduled to go in. And then with regards to well R4, we are, completed with all the drilling. The water quality data is in and everything looks really good in terms of the construction, the yield. Now we're just wrapping up the final report to go to DES. So those three things are going to be coming to close. And one new thing, one item is moving forward with the Mitchell Woods. I did want to comment if I had a moment. Jill had asked and Ron had asked us to comment on this glyphosate and its byproducts being used over at the, Parker, is it the, Ron, you probably have to help me out. Parker Village, is that correct? Yeah. And also there was a discussion about them putting in a irrigation well because their issues are grass is getting brown, and I want to strongly encourage the commissioners to not, I'm not in support of an irrigation well being developed inside the zone of contribution and recharge area for 4 and 5. You guys are spending a very substantial amount of money to get that well back online. And the last thing we want to have is somebody going in and, interfering adversely with the potential for you to pull water out. So
Maybe, can you hold on a minute? Cause we're not aware of the background on this. So I think, Jill might have a little background for us.
Face up.
Over there.
Face up.
So Parker Village,
Where is that?
over off of Front Street, right by 4 and 5.
Okay.
So I was contacted by the management company and they have Japanese knotwood over there that's really invasive. So they had gone to UH Co-op. Co-op has given them this guy, Lee Gilman's name. Information to Jimmy and Dan just saying, this is, they want to use an oil-based herbicide, but they also, it's also asking about that the residents were unhappy they couldn't water their gardens, so they wanted to be able to punch a well there for irrigation, and what does that do to well 4? So in getting together the information, I spoke with Lee Gilman, information from him forwarded off to Jamie. Okay.
Can you hear okay, John? Oh,
he's muted.
Muted.
you're muted. You're muted. John, you're muted.
Sorry, I got a dog barking out back here.
All right.
So I'm working on it with the volume, but I was gonna say maybe you just slide the hockey puck over closer. I don't know.
I was thinking of that. All right.
Did you get, what did you get, John?
Well, mostly from what James said, I guess that Parker Village, I'm not sure where it is. They're using glyphosate and wanting to put an irrigation well in.
So what the background on that was is that Parker Village, the management company had contacted me saying that they have a problem with Japanese knotwood, an invasive species that's kind of bamboo-ish. And they had contacted the New Hampshire Co-op, and the co-op had given him the name of Lee Gilman. And so I contacted him to find out what he was using. He said it was an oil-based herbicide and smothering technique too as well. But that's Parker Village is obviously right next to 4 and 5. And then he also asked about that they were looking to punch a well because I guess the residents of Parker Village were unhappy they couldn't water their grass this year. So they were looking at having their own well, but I also sent that information off to Jamie and Dan because we obviously want to know what that does to wells 4 and 5. So that's what Jamie and Dan have been reviewing, but we hadn't talked about that yet with the board.
So it's not glyphosate.
It is
Yeah.
glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate's an herbicide, right?
That's what
Or
They
they're
want
asking
it-
us.
they
they're
want it.
asking about it.
They're asking
There's a-
about using it.
I mean, glyphosate's an herbicide. It's not gonna kill a bug, right? You need a pesticide for that.
Yeah, correct. You're right.
Yeah, it's their vegetation they're trying to kill, the knotweed or something.
Japanese knotweed.
Oh, that sounded like a beetle to me. Okay.
No, it's a plant. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
Yeah. I mean, from the hydrogeologic standpoint, the occurrence of mobility in groundwater is generally thought to be relatively minor. And it's pretty widespread. I mean, the bottom line is that if it's, the applications are typically oil-based and focused on foliage. And that typically is a lower threat. But where the threat comes is if it stockpiles somewhere and it can concentrate and you have heavy rainfall and it leaches into the ground. The drinking water standard's pretty high at 700. John probably knows better than I do. I think it's 700 micrograms per liter. And there's a lot of low levels of glyphosate in the environment. So it's really a best management practice issue there. I don't think, I would be the one to say, no, you can't use it, but I think there is a way to do it that would not necessarily interfere with the groundwater quality in a negative way, but it has to be done correctly. And it's not something that, I don't know what their applications, I don't know anything about how they would propose to use it. So at the very least, in my view, we would want to have them submit a plan of what they would consider their action for their desire or use for this particular product. But I'm more interested in the groundwater withdrawal, and of course that is something that we have to know more about. So I don't know if that's that's a kind of a general response. I just think we need to know more information about what they're thinking on both ends. And I think you have, one of the things we talked about a number of years ago, and this may not be the right conversation timepiece, but I do believe that we should be working towards some kind of cooperative plan with the town that restricts groundwater withdrawals, large groundwater withdrawals within the groundwater recharge areas of your production wells, particularly since we're putting a lot of money into the treatment and infrastructure and so forth, that the last thing we want to have is a groundwater withdrawal that comes in that starts depleting the opportunity for Merrimack to use the water. And we had this one time occur many years ago and several boards ago, where we had a user put a well in on Continental Boulevard. I think Ron might have been aware of this, but Continental Boulevard, we kept seeing in our groundwater monitoring annual that the water levels in the aquifer were not recovering during the spring. They were continuing to go down each year. And so we've tracked it down, found out that someone had a 300 gallon minute well they were using for processed water, and we're able to work with the owner to stop the process because it was adversely impairing well number 2, which was your highest yielding well. So anyways, I'm not sure if anybody else any more input on that, but that's where I'm looking at this from the glyphosate in the extra well over the Parker Village.
Awesome. Where are you at?
Yeah, I can't hear anybody. Did you?
Did they drop the hockey puck?
I don't. I can hear you, John. I can't hear anybody else though.
I'll try to put something up on chat.
I got your chat, so it must go through.
Looks like they're touching something. That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's good.
You guys hear us?
Now we
Can hear
can.
you now.
It was,
All right, we must have just hit a button.
You're back.
You're back.
Yay.
no equipment.
No worries. We're moving into the new technology.
So what I was asking is right now, do we not have like any authority to like deny those irrigation well or?
As far
don't
as I
even
know, yeah, as far as I know, the town does not have, I don't know this for a fact, but I don't believe they do. What would happen is that the state, if, and I'm assuming that any irrigation well that they would put in would want to be using more than 40 gallons a minute, which triggers the large groundwater draw permit. So they would, under that condition, have to demonstrate that they're not adversely impairing an existing water source. But there's ways to get around that sometimes, and I just think that there's some value in having a two-prong approach, one with the state and one with the town, that at least says, you know, anybody who is applying for a well that would use water within a groundwater recharge area would need to submit an application or, you know, be reviewed by the Merrimack Village District because of the sensitivity, number one, for contamination transport, and number two, for yield impact. So,
And the
we have-
conservation wouldn't
Right.
have any authority on that? The Conservation Commission?
I don't
Probably
believe
not.
so. I don't believe
Wetlands.
so.
Okay. So,
I mean, as an alternative, we know that our neighbors here, Katinga, right? They have rainwater collection systems and supposedly, and feeding that into a pump and using that for irrigation. I don't know if they're still able to do this now with all the drought that we had, but they haven't been.
No, they, even when the sign went out, the pond went dry.
Right.
oh, really?
So I mean, that would be one thing that we should probably mention as an alternative, possibly. But it would be a shame for us investing and the town investing into all these systems and then the well running dry.
Yeah, the management company is fully on board. What the board is asking about.
So you planning to craft a response to them or something to, what did you say, to give us more information on the glyphosate? And, is that the stuff that's used in Roundup?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's even,
Foliage, they're not dumping around, it's for the weeds, the stalks. Then what they do, they cut everything down and they, put tarps over and smother it.
yeah. All right. So, are you just informing us about this, or do you want us to make a decision on how to reply, or what do we do? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, my recommendation is that we recognize that it's being discussed, and we, you know, we would formally send a note that there are that the MVD has concerns about both activities, and that more information needs to be laid out for a discussion that, you know, in order for it to be better understood. But I think that they need, you know, I think Parker Village should be at least notified that there is some significant concerns that the MVD would have moving forward with certain activities at that site.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the hope is that with the activities that we're having going on with the different wells are allowing us next year to not have to be as restricted with the water. So
It's true.
like until we are back into a normal operational mode, I think it would be premature to allow anybody or support anybody drilling an irrigation well.
So how and who do we want to have make that reply to them?
We're still working out the details. I mean,
Okay,
It can, unless the board wants to sign, then it can come from within.
okay. You want to work with Jamie to get that text, his concerns and put it in a letter and send back to them?
Yeah, I mean, we get what's prior to.
Yeah, all right. That sounds good. Anybody have any other comments, questions on that? Okay. So we do have your proposal for Mitchell Woods in front of us, Jamie. We'll probably start with that for the 4450. And that definitely is straightforward. I think that was exactly what we had asked you at the last meeting. The one thing I wanted to ask, if I may, is on page 2 under task 3. I know you talked about, you've got VOC sample and a PFAS sample in there. Would it make sense maybe to just add like arsenic, maybe iron, manganese, chloride, and sodium, just because I don't think that's been tested for, what was it, about 10 years?
Yeah, we will be doing that. I've actually included it. I just didn't write it down. That'll
Okay,
be- Yeah, we'll be taking all the metals.
okay, that was really my only comment. I don't know if anybody else has any questions on that or anything about the, we're looking at the August 12th proposal from Jamie about the Mitchell Woods production well. So if
I'm
there's
ready to move.
no other comments, then we can entertain a motion.
I just want to go through here tonight. So
Yeah, I hear you.
So I'm moving to move forward with the Emery and Garrett proposal dated August 12, 2020. File number 33.P00. You need to put it down, it's divided there. 33.P000050.21. For the test pump and water analysis, water quality analysis, Mitchell Woods production well. In the amount of $4,450. Coming out of budget.
Okay, motion by Wolf,
Seconded.
second by Ken. Any questions, comments?
I have a comment for anybody that's watching this. This is not, this is money well spent because it allows us to assess whether it's worth to continue pursuing it well. Any further.
Right.
Well has been tested in 10 years. We believe it's a very clean well. We don't know if it's still as clean as we thought it is. So this is to find out if that makes sense to continue.
Absolutely. Well said. Okay, no further comments. I'll entertain a motion. Probably just go into roll call right now. So Wolf, you want to indicate how you vote?
Aye.
Myself, Don Preventure, in favor. Ken?
Aye.
Ken's in favor. John?
Aye.
John's in favor. So that's 4 in favor, no abstentions, no oppositions. That's 4-0-0. So thanks for providing us with that, Jamie, and you are clear to proceed on that.
Thank you.
And so the other item we had in our packet that's related to yourself is the well 6 funding letter that you had recommended to the Brownfields program. Is that something you want to discuss a little bit further?
Well, I think just briefly, Brownfields has, we have a system over there that's kind of an orphan. This is the Merrimack Metals facility. It is the reason why well 6 is not in operation. There are funds, as I understand it, available, at least limited funds for cleanup and investigation. in the Brownsfield program. And I think, what this is kind of scratching the surface in the beginning. This may be a long process, but all really we're looking at is to say, would the MVDs support? I don't see any reason why you wouldn't, but would you support us, the MVD proceeding with the town to write a letter to DES to say we are interested in pursuing funding for mitigation and remediation with the state available funding to proceed with trying to figure out how do we clean this site up. And I think that's basically all we're talking about, is trying to get it opened up again, because it's been sitting in as an orphan state. And I don't know where this will lead. I'm not an expert in brownfields at all, but it just seems to me that if there is some funding available from the state and it's allocated, actually earmarked, as I understand it, for the Merrimack Metals, I think they have something like 30 or 40 or $50,000 that will, just see where this leads. And I'm not asking you to spend any money at this point. All I'm asking is just say, can I get the committee's or commission support to pursue and find out more about it as we move in direction of trying to get better, mitigate a bad situation, I guess is what I'm talking about. So.
I think it's a great idea. Wouldn't want to spend any kind of significant amount of money on it. And if it's grant money that's available to do the work, then that's fine. I don't know how much you know about that site, but I know there's a plume of contamination in the groundwater. Do you know if typically a plume of groundwater contamination comes from some kind of contaminated soil or something that was left behind? Do you know if the status of that site is that the contaminated soil is still there acting as a source to perpetuate the groundwater contamination?
Yeah, so it's my belief. Yeah, so it's my belief that they did do some work. The owner of that facility went bankrupt. It was I was there at the time when the operation was still operating. We got brought in at the very end after well 6 was put in line and the contamination, and that's kind of when we started with the Merrimack Village District. But that owner went bankrupt. It was a big time battle between the state and the owner to get anything done on that site. And long story short is that, in my view, there's still sources of contamination on the site. They may have been diminished because they did pull all the equipment, I think there's batteries and there's, everything that a recycled facility engages in. Also the fluff of the cars, the upholstery and things of that sort. So there's opportunity for a lot of contamination. I think it needs to be revisited to find out, to answer your question, Don, what is still there? Because if there's still source material there, it needs to go. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's not doing in the environment any good. It's not doing, the Merrimack Village District any good, because well 6 will never be able to really be used until we get, a clean bill of health. And it might be beyond our lifetimes, but at this time, we should kind of kick the can again, I think, at least to see what can be drummed up. And no pun intended.
That groundwater plume is not going to go away if the contaminated soil that generates the plume is left behind. So
exactly.
There's only a short amount of funds. You probably don't have enough money for a pump and treat on the groundwater system, and wouldn't make sense to treat the groundwater until you get rid of the source. So maybe there's enough money to help get rid of more of the source. And
exactly.
Sit around and wait for natural attenuation to work, then at least we'll be further along, I guess.
Right. I concur, and it's kind of always sat on the sideline, and I just, I'm not being an alarmist at all. I just think it's something that we, let's see if we can kick the can down a little bit further. And then I can, I'm not planning on spending any money. I'm just doing this on our own for free, just to see what we can find out. And then if something comes up and everybody's happy, with an action plan, then we'll present something. But if, as long as I didn't want to do anything behind the scenes, without having this open conversation.
No, you got my support personally. I don't know if we all want to weigh in on that or not, but
Well, 6 was close to 7 and 8. That's the one we talked
Sort
about
of.
the other day, right?
yeah.
That's the one we thought about possibly routing the pipe
It is.
over and using the
Yeah.
timing best treatment plant.
Yeah, I forgot what we called it now. We were gonna run some water over into the loop.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, blend it. Yeah, so well six. Yeah, blend. We still can blend. I think well six, but it would be at lower rates. So instead of the well is rated at 1,500 gallons a minute. It's a monster well, but we're looking at running it at 400 or 500 gallons a minute, and blending it with 7 and 8. So, and that's still an option I think down the road. But I do think that we should continue to look at this Madbury Metals orphan site. It is an orphan contamination site, and it would fit into the brownfields, I believe. So that's something else we got to just clarify.
If I
So
recall,
I appreciate that.
it's got some 1,4-dioxane was one of our issues, and then I think PFOA is a little bit higher there than it is at wells 7 and 8 as well, right?
Correct. So and it would be a source. The recycling facility would be a source of PFOA, PFOS, 1,4-dioxane, MTBE. All those. Definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I think you got.
Okay, good. I did have one other thing. If just 2 minutes, I spoke to Brandon Kernan this week because the salt mitigation is an issue that we want to continue to move forward. I have forwarded to him and DES the PowerPoint presentation that we presented to the town. We've had a long conversation about, a relatively long conversation about what the state could do to join forces with the MVD. And Brandon is looking at that and sharing that with other parties within the state to obtain, kind of some direction. Now, I don't know if you know that Brandon is now taken over Sarah Pillsbury's job. Sarah Pillsbury has retired. And so he's now at a much higher level within the state. I think he's very much interested and has personal interest in Merrimack. He believes that salt is a serious, not only just a threat for water use, but a health threat. And he understands the concerns we have about that combined with PFAS. So at this point in time, it's, I'm going to be waiting probably next couple of weeks as he starts formulating and we start formulating a plan together as to how we might be able to, one, identify and secure funds, two, what do we have that we can do to encourage, and I say this sensitively because of the concerns that the town had when we presented at our last time, but what do we have for tools that allow us to encourage the property owners that have large salted areas of impervious cover to lessen the salt load in our recharge areas? And that really is the bottom line. What tools can he come up with that will help us? So I wanted you to be aware that that is not, we're moving in that direction. I've got he and Steve Roy together, spoken to or emailed them both, but spoke to Brandon that is initiated. So per your request.
That's good. Yeah, I think that the timing is good on that. I know we tried to hit it last year before the winter came in to get the salt study really going, and hopefully this year we can get more traction on that. I would certainly like to, I think almost a year later after we went to the town council and they asked us if we contacted any of the, the salt users in the watersheds. And I just think we still haven't. We might have sent out one letter at one point, but I think we need to do that. The time is now because I think people are starting to get ready for their winter de-icing practices probably in the next couple months, right? So
right
now, we're getting to the point where it might be a good time to maybe, and I don't know where that falls in the order of tasks that go along with the salt study, but I think it's important that we try to engage, some of the bigger parking lot owners and really explain to them that timing is critical if they can look at some alternatives for de-icing or make sure they don't over apply de-icing compounds and just get them thinking about it. Like to at least reach out to them in the next couple of months to make sure that we get this thing going because now's the time to do it. I don't want to wait till December because the salt piles are already going to be there.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about trying to see if we can move that part of it forward?
Well, that was the focus of my conversations with the state, is to see if the state can provide some teeth to make that happen. Right. In other words, we want to do that. Is there some way that you can, provide some more teeth to make it happen, and not in an aggressively overbearing manner, but to allow us. I mean, really what we want to do is get the graphs out to the owners of the property to show them how things are changing with wells seven, one or two, well, three, wells 4 and 5, because those are the ones that have been going in the wrong direction. And we know where the parking lots are. We know where the salt load is coming from. And yeah, I agree 100% with you, Don, that is what we need to do. And I was just trying to get the state to be a partner in that discussion.
And I think I had mentioned that to you, that if we have, instead of just having, you and us an MVD meeting with these people, if we have someone from the state come, and it'll kind of demonstrate a sense of more urgency, I think. And it is urgent.
It is urgent.
Make investments here in our water system. We got to make sure that sodium chloride is not going to undermine everything we're doing. So, so we forward on that. That'd be great.
Yeah, and Brandon was, he wanted that data, the data, remember those graphs? He wanted that data to send to his department heads. So now that he's at that level, so that's all, I totally agree with you, and I'm totally agree with the commission that that's what needs to be done, and we need to do it now. We can't really wait, so I'll keep you posted at the next commission meeting. That's where we'll go.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to make a point. So Jill's going to find out when that letter did go out. The salt letter did get sent out. We want to resend it.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is, refresh my memory. I can't remember if that only went to the properties that were required to mitigate their salt use. Because there's some properties.
That went to everybody in the wellhead.
Did it go to everyone in the wellhead protection area? All right, that's good. I don't know if we want to wait on that and invite them to a meeting, if we can get like a meeting scheduled at some point with DES. I'd like them to see the presentation that you've done, because I know DES hasn't seen it. Certainly, no parking lot owners have seen it. It's very impressive. I think, just having everybody come here and sit down for a half hour, 45-minute meeting. And I don't know how we can do it in person these days, or if we have to do Zoom or whatever, but I think it would be maybe a good introduction to say, here's the same letter you got last year, basically, but now we're offering a different venue that we can actually show you more details. And I think presenting that PowerPoint would be a very powerful thing to do.
And
you might not even seen it, actually. You guys seen that? No. Yeah, so I don't think you had. I think it was only
What was it?
right. It was presented to the town council, and then we had one here too. We had some town representatives come from the DPW and police department and everything right in this room.
That wasn't part of that.
No, but to have that presented to the people who are applying the salt, those are the people we need to reach.
Right.
We got the involved because they salt the roads, and we still haven't got the DOT from New Hampshire DOT in either. But if we can maybe try to set something up, I think in the next month or two, or at least the next couple months by October, I think that's when everyone's going to start looking at their, getting ready for the salt application for the winter.
And we might offer it twice. We might offer it in October, we might offer it in November. I do think we can do it Zoom, because we can do a Zoom meeting with 100, 200 people, and they can see the PowerPoint presentation and they can weigh in on questions and so forth. And we do it quite frequently with bigger number of people, 50 to 100 people. So I think more people will likely look at it if they don't have to come into a building inside, to watch it. I think we could be successful in that. And I also think that the state can help us bring in the state DOT. And that's the other issue that we talked about today. So, or mentioned. So, yes, on all accounts. And yes, I think we should do it with the homeowners. And yes, I think we should do it with all the businesses. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Was this or was this not included in the ESR in the order that we had approved already? I know there was some, I'll have to hear, but weren't there some activities for you to reach out to a couple parties? And I'm not sure property owners were part of it. I know the state was.
Yes, and not the property owners, but the state was. The state working with Brandon, yes. So.
You need if you need to modify your contract to include reaching out to the state, the landowners, because I really think that's where it's at. I mean,
Right, the
Well,
question is,
that
do
would
you
be
guys
from
want to
us, though.
right?
That letter would be generated,
yeah,
probably use the same letter, maybe change it up to invite them to a Zoom meeting or something like that.
Right.
With a link and all that, we can modify that letter and just resend the same one.
do you think maybe we could set up a possible date and to see if Brandon or somebody from DES might have want attendance at that?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll work
You
towards
gotta
that
work-
end.
Got to work with everybody to set up a date for that, even
Yep.
if it's a total. So maybe if we can work towards that, once we get the date, then we can send the letter out, the invitational letter, and ask them to participate, and we'll provide them with more Zoom links in the future or something, right?
Right, and I can bring to the next council meeting or commissioners meeting, a change order for whatever we decide is going to be the best venue, or, whether it's Zoom with everybody and, by presentation or something like that. We can do that certainly next time, but at this point, yes, I'll work on getting a date for DES to be a participant in a Zoom meeting with landowners, all landowners within the wellhead protection areas about salt application.
You have a question, Ryan?
Well, what's the question, but maybe we'll include Merrimack TV in the Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
That might be able to get
that can
played on,
play, yeah. Put it on YouTube and all that.
Good idea, yeah.
Yep.
get some more viewers.
That sounds great.
What was that? I missed it.
We can invite Merrimack TV to the Zoom meeting for that presentation, and maybe we can get some airplay from that as well.
Perfect.
All right, did you have anything else, Jamie?
That's it. Short night.
Well, before you go, we have an action item list, and there's a couple
Well,
of things on there.
Should we make an action item out of that to make sure we stay on
Is
track
that
with
what
the?
the comment was?
Yeah, that's a good
Why
idea.
not? Yeah.
To go ahead and have Jamie set up try to set up a date with DES if they're willing to participate in having a Zoom meeting with landowners in the wellhead protection areas. Did that, Amanda? Okay. Yeah, so I was saying, Jamie, we just have a running list of action items. There's a couple things on here that I think I just wanted to check in with you. One of them, they're both kind of related to the same thing. A while back, I had asked about, you know how you're doing the graph of PFOA and all the PFAS and all the minerals for all of our wells. I had asked if you could do a graph of basically just PFOA and PFOS for the Pennachuck water system. And I had emailed you I forget if it was a link to a file off of DES or maybe it was Pennachuck's website, but it had the results of PFAS testing from Pennachuck. and it was just a matter of graphing that data.
Okay.
Do you recall that, or maybe should I send that email to you again?
Yeah, sorry, I don't, Don, but that doesn't mean you didn't ask me. I don't
Right.
recall it, but if you could resend that to me, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I think those were the only two items on here that were related to your involvement, so.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is, probably Keith might have already discussed this with you, but he just presented us with a scope of work to evaluate different source options that he's considering in total to try to normalize the costs. One of them deals with developing a replacement well for well 3 that's certainly heavily involved with the work you're doing. The other one also includes artificial recharge that's heavily involved with what you're doing. And Underwood's going to try and put some cost estimates to those. So I just wanted to make sure that you're certainly aware of that they're going to be reaching out to you to try and get, what is it going to cost to replace well 3, assuming we're going to move forward with a well maybe over by MVD 1 or wherever it turns out that the investigation you're doing now, whatever your recommendation is going to be about developing a well, to work with Underwood to give them a scope of work that in some costs. And I just want to make sure it includes all of the engineering and hydrogeology work that you're going to be doing to try and capture everything, not only infrastructure costs, but also, engineering costs that's going to be included in that. And one of the things that I recall, and maybe if you can look into this if you don't remember, but I know the artificial recharge work that you were doing. If you recall, a couple of years ago, I believe we had made an application to the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund for a matching grant to do some artificial recharge work. And I remember the number, I think in my mind, it was like $800,000. And I don't know if you can refresh my memory or if you want to look into it, but it seemed to me that included basically only engineering and column tests. It seemed like a very expensive amount of money. And I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, or if I am remembering that correctly, is that something that is absolutely necessary? It just seems like an exorbitant cost on a potentially $4 million project to spend $800,000 on hydrogeology and column test. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I don't think it's just that. I think it was the engine. I'll go back and revisit that, Don, but as my recollection is, it was the pilot testing, actually digging some temporary artificial recharge pits, and getting the water over from the Merrimack, which was a little bit of a challenge to get it over there, setting up a temporary pumping station, and then doing design work for kind of doing an assessment of what the cost would be, kind of what you're saying in a normalized way. If we're going to, what is going to be the ultimate cost? But I think you're right. That seems a little high to me. So I want to go back and see what else was in there. Keith had reached out to me, and I owe him a call to set up a date specific to meet to talk about the various water resources that you just mentioned, so that they can move forward with a normalized cost. And it won't be this week, but I'm hoping maybe that we can establish something next week. And he and I have got a couple of dates that we're pushing around to see if we can make happen. So yes, I'm aware of it, but we haven't finalized that meeting time.
And then the only other thing, I don't know if it's applicable or not, but our new treatment plant at wells 4 and 5 will have some columns built into the treatment plant. And I don't know if those are the same columns that you can, I know you need to take soil samples and load the columns and run river water through those to see how it filters out organics and whatnot.
Right.
We just look into, and you might not be doing this until the plant's built in a couple of months, but You might want to go there and visit the plant and see what those columns look like. I have no ideas what they're gonna look like either, if they're already there or not, but if we can do this testing on our own, in our own facility, we might be able to save some costs there, if it's applicable. I don't know if the columns are the same ones you use for the column
Well,
test that you're.
Yeah, if we bring water over from Merrimack, we wouldn't actually use the columns. If we don't bring water over, we would use the columns. So, because of the two different approaches, one is one would be doing a column test, one would be doing an actual ground test. So, now I will definitely look at that, and I will definitely have that conversation with Keith to see if indeed we could use those columns for part of it, length, diameter, are they vertical columns, that kind of thing. So,
Because you're trying to pack the soil that's in the artificial recharge basin into a column and kind of
Correct.
represent that condition, right?
correct.
This
Yep.
is not media we're testing. This is the ability of the soil in the artificial basin to
Treat.
how it affects water,
Yep.
water quality of the river water.
Correct. Exactly. So I will I'll look into that. I did not know that. It's helpful. So good.
Just thinking if there's a way to reduce that $800,000, because that was really where I was having a trouble with that number, and
Sure.
maybe if you could look into that for the next meeting and see what that included or not, and if we can reduce that scope of work to something manageable based on equipment we already have, that would be great.
Right. Well, that's one of the things that I'm hoping that in the September time period that I'll be able to give you a pilot test cost.
Okay.
Revised, and I wasn't looking at the old one, but I was going into it as a new entity now that we know what we've got a little bit more out there. So, and I did mention, just so you know, I did mention it to Brandon tonight, or to this before in our conversation about the use of our artificial recharge, and did he still feel the same way, that there would be no fatal flaw? And he said, no, I see the benefit for diluting sodium chloride. I see the benefit for diluting, PFAS. I see the benefit for enhancing recharge, and I see that the Merrimack River is, an opportunity that isn't going to suffer from low flow. You're not going to have restrictions on. Got to go through the process, of course, but that there's no fatal flaw in that process. So he was still he was still supportive of that. So
Good.
I'm actually curious about that. The other day, I saw comments from some people that fish on the Merrimack River in boat and canoe, and apparently the water level on the river itself is very low right now.
well, we are we're not getting a lot of base flow, so yeah, it's low, but we would still, with the volume of water that we would be withdrawing, and the amount of recirculation of wastewater into the system. And he brought that up too, that he didn't think that we would be under any kind of restriction. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to take water at the peak drought periods. And that's kind of the concept of the artificial recharge, is to take it when the water flows at a greater rate and then store it and recover it. But we would have problems with the other two rivers. The Babusick would be an issue, and so would be the Zegan. So.
Okay. All right, everybody good? Any other questions for Jamie? I'm good.
Great. Well, good. Well, thank you for letting me come in late.
No problem. I'm glad you made it. It was good timing.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, have a good evening.
All right, I want to sign out too, guys. See ya. This is Keith, but
All right, good. Thanks, Keith.
Keith, I'll talk to you later.
yeah, good. I was glad
Okay.
to listen, but you guys have a good night.
Okay, bye.
All right. All right, so I think now we can move to the minutes. So we've got a bunch of minutes here that we need to address. I guess I'll take them in order.
If we approve them all in one shot, and Amanda fills in the dates.
Second it.
No, I think we should do them one at a time.
Okay.
Just because I think there might be some comments on some of them. All right, May 18, 2020, meeting minutes. Anybody have any comments, questions on that? I don't, I'm good with that. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 18, 2020 as written.
Seconded.
Second by Ken, motion by myself, second by Ken. Any other comments? Roll call, Wolf. Vote in favor?
Approved, yay.
Myself, Don Preventure, in favor. Ken?
Ken.
Ken votes in favor. John?
I would abstain this one. I was not there.
Okay, good point. So that is 3 in favor, no oppositions, 1 abstention. All right, June 9, 2020. Any comments, edits to those?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes as printed.
Seconded.
Second by Ken. Roll call, Wolf.
In favor? Yay.
Myself, Don Preventure, in favor. Ken?
Aye.
And John?
John Watson there.
Abstain again?
John's abstaining. June 9th? Oh, that's right. So you approved it, right? Yep. Okay, so we got 3-0-1 on that one, with John abstaining. June 22nd, 2020. No, I just did June 9th. So June 22. The only question I had was on page 4, line 35. It says, why MVD is continuing to allow, it should say hotels. We dropped a ho in there somehow. So just make that edit.
What page we on?
On page 4, line 35 of the June 22nd meeting minutes. So other than that, I'm fine. If anybody else has any other corrections. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the June 22nd, 2020 minutes as amended.
Seconded.
Second by Ken. Roll call on those approvals for June 22nd. Wolf?
In favor?
Myself, Don Preventure, in favor. Ken?
Ken, yes.
Ken's in favor. John, you're
Another abstention for me.
abstention for John. Okay, so 3-0-1 with John abstaining. Now we are at actually the March 31st annual meeting, which was postponed to July 7th. So these are the July 7th, 2020 annual meeting minutes. Any corrections, edits on that? The only one I have is on page 3, line 37. Actually, it starts on line 36, and I'll just read it. Rosemary Rung asked for clarification, stating this money was budgeted, but not, it says extended, but I think it wants to say expended in the 2018, 2019 budget. So if you guys all agree with that edit, I believe that's what it was intended to say, is expended, not extended. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's the only edit that I had. So seeing no further edits, I'll make a motion to approve the July 7th, 2020 annual meeting minutes.
Seconded.
Second by Ken, roll call vote.
In
Wolf?
favor?
Myself, Don Preventure, in favor. Ken?
Ken in favor.
John, you can vote on this one if you want.
All right.
Was he there? Oh, you weren't.
I was there, but I was not a commissioner.
Not until later that night. Okay, so you'll abstain on that one, correct?
Sure.
3-0-1 on that with John abstaining. And we have next the July 20 meeting minutes. Any corrections or questions on that one?
I don't.
The only edit I have is on page 8, line 1. Just to make it more clear in the title, artificial recharge, if we can add the words at wells 4 and 5. Simple as that. Page 8, line 1. So
Put it in parentheses, but that's the way the the agenda read because of the
Okay.
projects listed out. So I can put it in parentheses.
Sure. Just the reader wouldn't know where, I don't think it says wells 4 and 5 anywhere in here, so they probably might not know where we're talking about artificial recharge. So with that edit, I'll make a motion to approve the July 20 minutes as amended. I'm gonna switch it
Really?
up- I'm gonna switch it up this time.
Really? Okay, seconded.
Motion by myself, second by Wolf. Do a roll call vote. Wolf,
Yes, in favor.
myself in favor. Ken,
Abstain.
abstain.
I'm in favor.
John, favor. So that's 3-0-1 with Ken abstaining. Because you weren't there, right?
I
All right.
didn't catch that. I shouldn't have looked over there.
That's right. I should have known myself. Okay, minutes are good. All non-public minutes are sealed, so we don't have to do that. What is next here? We got, the action items is next on the agenda. So we can probably just go through those quickly. Action item number 2, Ron, I think you said you were gonna do this quarterly. Yes, this to be done quarterly.
I started updating it for this meeting and I just didn't get it finished, so
Okay,
I'll try to get out to you this week if I can.
all right. At least if you have it available at the next meeting, I think we'll be all set on that. Want to do that. We already talked about number 3 and 4 with Underwoods. Those stay. I think 5 needs to stay because that's related to number. What else? Do you have? Number 11. Those are kind of related to each other. 5 and 11, and I have to get Jamie that email again so he can graph the water level. I mean, graph the PFAS levels. So those need to stay. So item number 9. We have that letter. No, that's not the letter. That's regulations regarding stump dumps. I thought you had already kind of updated us on that.
For the stump dump letter, so.
Right. Does anyone have
That's
any
done.
Well,
questions on that?
I think Ron's waiting for me and he's been waiting for some time.
And I apologize, I forgot about it as well.
Can you send it
I
out?
was gonna remind you to see if you could.
Okay, so you didn't send it out?
I haven't sent
Okay,
it yet.
yeah, I'll take care of it this week. I actually wrote it down.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if I
That's number
heard the
10.
result.
So
No,
number
no,
9 can go, right? Because
No.
you,
No, because I was supposed to, I saw 2 or 3 things that I wanted to change, wanted to have changed.
right, but I'm just looking at item number 9.
10 was a draft letter.
Number 9 was just
Oh,
Jill.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Jill was
Yep,
just
yep,
to
yep.
explain to us what the regulations are. So I think Amanda, if we're all in agreement with this, Amanda can cross off or remove number 9 from the action items. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
But action number 10 stays because that letter is not issued yet, correct? Okay. And number 11 stays. I got to get that information to Jamie. Number 12, capital reserve funds on Emery and Garrett change order 2. You remember what that was all about?
That was, I
See,
think
we-
that was the same question that we had earlier, where
Where funds are coming from?
We had a motion to use capital reserve funds. But you weren't sure if that's really something we can do, and instead we wanted to use it out of the budget. Almost think that's the same thing. And that would be a good one to keep, to clarify that
Yeah.
once and for all.
Yeah.
So it might make sense to reword this a little bit. Hang on, where is it?
12.
Yeah, so basic 12 should be reading something, minor to clarify whether capital reserve funds for well development, right, or whatever the name is of that thing, for new well development can be used for engineering orders, right?
Amanda, can you hear him okay?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, I can hear him okay.
Questions, can you understand me? English.
All right, so that's gonna stay. Number 13, I think that's gonna stay because that's probably ongoing for some time. That's the investment, investigate the disaster recovery policy. Number 15, I do have something to report on that. And I did find, actually, somebody approached me out of the blue. Russell Resources, it's a company that I had dealt with on a piece of equipment on a project for in a water system, actually a wastewater system. They happen to be representatives for this flow point water dispenser. It's got a rinse feature, so we'd have to put like a wastewater collection point. It sounded like a great thing, but I asked them to give us a price, and it's like 15 grand just for the unit. And we'd have to provide water to it and a wastewater from it. So I guess I'll just step back and ask the board now, do we want to consider doing any kind of scaled down version of this was supposed to be a free water dispenser for any Merrimack resident to come and fill up their 5-gallon jugs of water or whatever jugs of water they have, so that they don't have to spend money buying bottled water every month before all of our wells are treated with PFAS treatment. It's was kind of a nice idea, but we ran this by our insurance carrier. They weren't thrilled with having the public coming onto a industrial site, pump station site. But I guess if you guys are willing to just drop this thing once and for all, I guess I am too. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't want to pursue this any further. I mean, 15,000 is way more expensive than I thought. I asked them if there was some kind of way that we could get someone to contribute to this.
And you're not gonna be done with 15,000 because you need a wall where this thing goes to.
Right.
You need the facilities around, you need to
Right.
protect it across. You need a door in front of the vestibule where you put that thing, so
Right.
you're looking at 50 to 100 grand real quick,
Yeah, so I think that's getting beyond.
so.
I thought we'd have a little spigot with a button you could push and water comes out and let it go and you'd be done,
Yeah.
but nothing's ever that simple when you try to really look at it, right?
Not for drinking water, especially liability.
Yeah. So,
Somebody stuffs some gum up there or something.
That's right.
yeah. Then we'd have to put cameras out to see who the culprit is, and it goes on and on. So good deed doesn't go unpunished. So I'm willing to just drop the issue. No one's pushing me on it, but there's a lot of people complaining on the forums about buying bottled water still, and I feel bad about it, but I think there's anything we can do without breaking the bank on this. So I guess we'll just cross that one off the list and put it to bed. Okay.
Right, everything.
And the last item was with Wolf trying to see about getting Zoom online. Did
Well,
that go anywhere?
No, the idea was to allow
Public.
the public to participate in, without just calling in by phone and seeing the presentations and so on. So, kind of like what New Hampshire DES did the other day with the hearing on the air permit extension.
Oh, yeah.
campaign.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't use Zoom, they used, I think it was GoToMeeting or something like that. So. Next meeting.
Okay. So I guess we really only crossed off number 9, right? All right. Let's try to make a concerted effort to get these things addressed so that.
15.
Oh, yeah. 15 is gone too. Yeah, water dispenser. No, that's good. No, because I think we added, 3 or 4 items tonight? So let's be good if this list doesn't keep growing to more than one page. Okay. I guess next on the agenda is just old business. Does anybody have any old business to discuss?
This is really for business.
Yeah, that's true.
In reality, we can probably combine that on the agenda.
That's true. I do want to go and talk about these. Oh, and I forgot to ask Jamie about this too. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look in the packet.
still having a hard time reading it, to be honest.
It is a little tricky. I got some flow charts on here to help to figure out what numbers. So what we're looking at here is the benchmark water levels for groundwater management. I don't know if you have that in front of you, John, but these are
I do have it in front of me. I have no idea what it says.
right. So basically, these are trigger levels in our wells and in monitoring wells that surround our production wells, if I'm not mistaken, of where critical depth to groundwater levels are set and where we measured these recent and past water levels to see where we're at. And what is kind of concerning to me is if you look down under where it says MVD 3, not the first line that under MVD 3, but like the third, what is that? Second, third, fourth, fifth line down, MVD 3. Then you go across to 8, 10, 20 for a date. Then you go across to where it says, the column says readings. If you see 36.21 over there, that's the depth to water in well 3, right? Our production
I don't know if
well.
that's right in well 3 or not, but it is definitely affected by, that might be in 3.
So the what I'm getting at is you're comparing that to the 3 numbers that go across on the first line where it says MVD 3. There's a 32, a 34, and a 37, and those are under the columns of level 1, level 2, level 3. I think that's telling us
No idea what you're saying.
between a level 2 and a level 3 concern. Well,
But I also put a little comment that reading, I guess, changes whether the well's on or off.
right.
I just don't know what it would be. So if the well was shut off, we make it a totally different reading.
Right. So I guess that was my question, is how serious is that number? In other words, if we're measuring water at 36.21 feet and we have a level 1 alert level when it's down to 32 feet deep, and then a level 2 at 34 feet deep, and a level 3 emergency at 37 feet deep, and we're at 31.21 feet deep, if that's real, that's a concern. So, and then this table's hard, and maybe
Yeah.
there's a way you could rearrange
Can
this
I
table.
kind of just change it up a little bit?
I think what the issue with that table is that you have the well ID and the period of record going both down instead of going, the period of record should be going over. So, for each well ID, we get a threshold level, but then after that, we get periods of record where we continue to chronologically record the readings. Right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna, if you wanted to send me that thing, or
I probably
I'm
could take it
sketching.
out.
It basically needs to be something like that, right? Where we have the wells listed here, row by row, both the test wells and the monitoring wells and the actual wells. Then we have this part here that never changes, that only lists
Which are the trigger levels.
what are the trigger levels, right? This part is going to be static. This is not going to change. And then from here on out, you have your readings.
So you'll have a column for different
Correct,
readings.
right.
going
So here you would
across.
have your continuous chronological
Date,
readings.
date.
Yeah.
And now you can
Yeah.
compare them with a formula, this reading with this level. And based on that, you can actually use automatic
Red text
conditional
to stand
form,
out
right?
and all
You
that
can do
stuff.
conditional formatting that basically says, okay, I'm lower than any of these levels, so I need to respond. And you can really make this a cockpit for yourself where you just have to copy and paste the readings into the column for that date, right?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be, I believe, much easier to read.
I don't know if there's someone that's really good at spreadsheets that could work on that with you or something, or even,
I'm sure. I tried to go off of what we had for a spreadsheet before.
right.
It was kind of set up in this format, so I didn't want to change it too much, but I'm up for anything because it is hard to read. But I would like to have, if we, I know, Don, you and I were talking about this earlier, but I'd almost like this, I have questions for Jamie as well when this was created, because I don't know.
What these
Like-
numbers are really based on and.
Well, so like well seven, like we were talking earlier, I know in well seven, there's 5 feet of water above the pump motor. And then, or the pump, and then at 7 feet, it'll shut off. But I don't know where, so in the wells,
How
we're
those-
looking up from below, and then when you're doing your monitoring wells, you're measuring down. I don't know where these measurements for like, for example, well seven, where 35, 36, 38, where that corresponds to the groundwater, is it 5 feet, 7 feet in the well? There's gotta be a correlation with that number, and I don't know what it is. So I'd like to get maybe on the agenda, maybe for next month. Jamie can go over this a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, do you want to maybe talk to him
I
over the
will,
next
'cause
month and just explain
I'd like a
that?
little bit of clarification on it as well, and it just, and you really almost, so we're using numbers. And again, like well three, if that read varies, how accurate is that read to use as a trigger number? If it's gonna depend if the pumps are on or off.
Right, I mean, but if it is in well 3, and it is, if 37 feet is where the screen is, and we're at 36.21, when it is pumping, that is when the problem's gonna be.
Yeah, I don't know if that is the screen though.
That's what I know, we
Yeah.
need to figure all that
I
out,
know.
so. Cause I mean, looking at everything else, if I'm understanding this correctly, well 2 seems to be in better shape, it's, one of the monitoring wells is at 18.1 versus a trigger level 1 alert at 20.9. We're not at the level 1 yet. That's good. The rest of the monitoring wells at well 3 are below the level 1 concerns. And then well 7 and 8, that's another one that we're 35.39 at MVD 7, and we have a trigger at 35. Then the next trigger, level 2, is at 36. So we're between the level 1 and level 2 warning, if these numbers are correct.
Right. And
But then the rest of the monitoring wells that you have listed here are slightly, some are at, some are above the level 1. So, maybe we're having a little more drawdown at well 7, a little bit more at well 3, but well 2 is looking all right. That's kind of what we're trying to gain here.
And then and that's why I threw these in, because you look at the rest of the reads. I mean, we're a little bit down, from 18, but nothing's really drastic.
I had trouble with trying to read this too. I'm not really sure what these numbers are. And then it says records of 2007, but it's 2018, right? And 19,
Oh, that might be just
just a copy over thing.
yeah.
But these must be all like the monitoring wells and then
Yeah.
the day and time that they're read probably.
Yep.
So these, I guess maybe,
It was to just give you a little bit more history of everything that we're looking at.
right. But I mean, we made a decision to go back to a modified level 1 irrigation allowance. And I want to make sure and I'm not sure we're really exactly tracking what's going on in the aquifers. I want to know if we're getting to a critical point in the aquifer, we may need to reconsider that level 1. So I just want to make sure we're not missing something, have a well draw down and suck air into the screen and shut the whole system down. It's a more dire situation. So I think we got to beef up this whole monitoring and what it means,
And I would agree. I mean, I do find it confusing myself, but you do have the level 1, level 2, level 3, but I think it's you're not just looking at this, you got to look at your other levels as well. And because we always have some that do dry up, some that, and they dry up early in the year, but
some monitoring wells.
yeah, but
Right.
I will talk to Jamie and see what.
Yeah. I just think we need to understand this a little better and have it presented in a better format. And
I don't think we're anything in a bad situation right now. I
Yeah.
think we're still okay. We're I think we are in a moderate, not a moderate,
It's a moderate drought.
It is moderate,
It's closer to severe than abnormally dry, though.
but it's nothing else, nothing we haven't seen.
Right.
Or, like 2018, I believe was a moderate as well. If not, I don't think it was.
I know 16 was bad,
Yeah,
so,
and we're towards the end of it. We're almost through it anyway.
eh,
Through the watering. I don't-
hopefully.
Is there no way to get the divers connected to the SCADA system?
Divers.
If we were to, if we would add like I'm assuming that the red.
As we move forward with the treatment plants, we're gonna have more and more stuff that we can add, because we're gonna be getting additional tags.
Right, right.
Anything's possible.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just
You-
how much
right.
it costs.
Because I mean, just the fact of collecting those divers, right, and reading them and then dropping them again and collecting yet again a week later or a month later, I don't know how we do it, is a lot of labor, right? If they could just stay in the well and radio their readings up to to a data
And then
collection.
we can have a
device,
history on them.
right? You would think that with the SCADA system, then we create so many data points, we can start graphing this out. And again, it's probably one of those things where we just have somebody program that report for us. And now you have a continuously self-updating graph that you can.
I can find out. It might be a whole different style data diver that we would need to install. And we think we need to have some sort of a radio, and you'd have to have a transmitter to.
Right. And we might have to have different transmitters at the different, wells and something like that, but.
I'm
And,
picturing more like a meter read.
Right, we're
Software
talking,
read.
exactly right,
Yeah.
but you're talking about labor savings, so, it's something that we should be able to justify, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
Well, how much labor are we putting into, entering the data into those spreadsheets?
it's a half, yeah,
And that's Jill's time as far as I know,
Yeah.
right? So it's
True.
not necessarily cheap time. either.
she's a lot faster than I am at doing any of
I'm
this
sure
stuff.
she is.
But,
Yeah, me
I
too.
mean, but there's labor going out and collecting. the
Yeah,
data
exactly,
as well,
right,
and it-
right.
Yeah,
So you're probably,
at least a half a day anyways.
So I know at our production wells, there should be, and I think you said we have them at well 7. We
Well,
have
some
a,
will shut down at.
so it's got a level monitor in there that will shut the well off before the water level gets down to the screen. And that's actually a requirement in Massachusetts. I don't think it is in New Hampshire, but it's a good practice to have. You have to have, that's probably a wired conduit, right? It's probably a wire. It's not radio, I'm guessing. You have to put it in a different conduit because you get interference with the signal, with the power.
Right.
So it wouldn't make sense to do them on monitoring wells. You probably want to do some kind of radio thing, but at least having some kind of a fail-safe mechanism that will notify us. It'd be nice to be able to see where our water levels are in our production wells, at least. Start with that.
Yep.
And we would know where the screen is, the top of the well screen, and we know where the water level is, and we can say, oh, we gotta, the system should shut the well off if it gets down too low.
part of it is to eliminate human error. I mean,
That's true
these
too.
big tables are very easy to screw up, right? And now you start feeding maybe month after month, maybe you make a mistake, right? At one point that then carries forward. And all of a sudden the data that you connect to the last 12 months is worthless, right? So having a data capturing system in place, since we already have the SCADA system anyway. So tagging on to that and expanding it and automating that is probably money well spent.
As long as you don't get into a situation where we're maxed out and we have to move up into the next level of
Well,
SCADA.
we're already doing that. We're maxed out now, so we're moving into the next
Okay,
tier, and so we're figuring everything at this point now with 7 and 8 and 2. Yeah, we're jumping into those new tiers. So
one of our commissioners is eating dinner. That's not fair. So we have to come down.
I can't blame them.
Sorry, Wolf. I'd have a cracker and cheese. That's my dinner.
All right,
Was that a proposal to adjourn? Is that what that was?
I think it is.
Yes.
Is that what you said? You just
Yeah.
made the motion?
Yep, seconded.
Motion made by John, second by Ken. We'll have to do roll call. All
Su-
those in favor?
Superintendent,
Oh, sorry,
I
I'm
better
sorry. I
have a
totally
whole-
even forgot.
Jamie already had
Thanks for
mentioned
reminding me.
about the
It's on the
sidewalk
agenda.
tomorrow, and I just want to mention, I'm gonna be on vacation next week.
So, he said there's a sidewalk tomorrow at 6. I actually wouldn't mind going to that.
One PM.
I hope it's PM.
It is PM.
If I wouldn't be
I'll send
more,
you the- I'll forward you the email. It's at the kiosk, I guess, but I don't know.
Where's that for 4 or 5?
the test
No.
well that they're gonna be putting in at,
Oh, so-
Wasserman Woods. It's right by my house. I could just,
Yeah,
so I wouldn't mind going in case they just have more questions that, Jamie's guy, who's going,
I believe it's gonna be Dan.
Dan, in case he might not have the full, background, I wouldn't mind going. I don't even know where the well's going, the test well's going anyway, so I'd like to.
Pretty much you walk, if you go, the trail, you can walk out to Green Pond from,
Yeah,
Washington.
I'll find if you
walk
want to,
into- get to the end of it's,
let me know where they're meeting.
it's in the kiosk. I don't know if that's down at the,
Not sure where the kiosk.
Yeah,
I'll find them then. It's 6 o'clock. I'll plan to go if I'm free, which I believe I am. So that'll be good. I should do that. All right. Sorry to shortchange you. They
No, that's-
always
that's-
forget that.
that's all I had. I mean, it was really, half time I come up with stuff and
That's
it's,
right.
mentioned during the meeting, so
And so that's the superintendent report. We're good with that.
good with that.
The only other thing is questions from the press for public. Do we see on there if anybody's trying to call, or is there? I don't even know how to.
It would at least show the participants. We have 4 right now. There's 4 on the screen, so nobody's doing that. Well,
Okay.
we're not good.
All right, so no questions from the press or public. The next meeting is September 21st, 2020. And now we can entertain a motion to adjourn. John, your spotlight.
Seconded.
Second by Ken. Roll call on adjournment. Wolf,
Favor?
myself in favor. Ken,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
favor. Okay, thanks, everybody, and
Thanks, everybody.
have a great evening.
You as well.
On the money, right on the money.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
Amanda.
Nice job.
Wow, we're 5 minutes early.
We are.
2 minutes early.
Shut this off.
Just exit.
Thank you, Merrimack TV.
Well, you too.